Welcome everyone to back to Cinematic Realms. We've been off for a couple weeks. I'm your host Gwyn. With me, as always, is Jared. And oh my God, is that a sight for sore eyes? I see our good friend Stev, aka Mr. Steven Stark, back to the Sundays 6 p.m. time slot. How you doing, man?
Deja vu, buddy. Deja vu. It has been a minute. It's been almost a year since I quit streaming.
Yeah. Uh, we hopefully will be joined by Blue Lemons. We're just waiting on her. Hopefully, she's just running a few minutes late, but we'll see. In the meantime, there's plenty to talk about. Um, I'm trying to think of like how to even start. Like we Jared and I got to talk about season one a couple weeks ago on the last stream we did. As a matter of fact, actually, you know what? Before we dive into the show, I just remembered I do want to talk about a couple things. One, explain why we were off for a couple weeks, and we had a couple streams planned that unfortunately are going to be did not materialize and or will be put on the back burner for a little bit. Um, Something happened a couple weeks ago, that kind of unfortunately rocked a lot of our foundations, and I did not feel like streaming. I was in a bad place, especially that week. So I said to Jared, hey, do you mind if we just take some time off? I'm not even sure I want to stream for the rest of the year. Uh, and he was like, yeah, sure, no problem. Ultimately, we decided that at the very least, we wanted to stream about both the second season of the series, Arcane, and also in a couple weeks, the not the Rings of Power, the War of the Rohirrim. I was almost right, Lord of the Rings. And we may also be streaming next week as well, and we'll talk about when we get to the mid-roll what that'll be. But I'm feeling better. I'm feeling recharged. And also, we were supposed to talk about the show The Penguin, which is a fantastic show. Thought it was great. Unfortunately, it does also deal with some subject matter that hits a bit close to home for me. So again, it was a thing where I asked Jared, I know you really wanted to talk about the show, but do you mind if maybe we don't? If maybe it's just one of those shows that we enjoy, but we don't necessarily talk about on the channel. And Jared, you were gracious enough to say, yeah, that's fine. So that it's just some quick explanations about what's been going on. And yeah, but we're back now, and I'm very excited to be talking about Arcane season 2, which I dare say may be even a greater achievement than season 1, even though I thought that was impossible. But yeah, I want to start with our guest Stev, because man, Stev, if it wasn't for you, Jared and I would not even be talking about the show on the channel. I just since this is your first time on the channel talking about the show at all, just if you want, you can sort of broadly cover your feelings on the show, but also I want to know, as if I don't already know, but you know how we do these things, about what your reaction to season 2 was.
Okay. Well, since I didn't get to talk about season 1 with you, I will just say I came out of season 1 with the impression that this show had the potential, when it was finished, to be the best thing I've seen in 10 years or more. And I know there's a such thing as recency bias, and it's going to take a little while for it to settle in, to make sure that I'm evaluating it with a critical eye, as I do try to do with everything. But I feel like they nailed it. I feel like this is the best thing I've seen in 10 years or more. And that includes shows that like, is it better than Game of Thrones? I think so. You know, like, that's a big thing to say. Is it better than The Expanse? I think so. Oh yeah, you've got my background up. That's the same picture I used for my background.
I know. I just, as I was about to put it up, I was like, oh wait, there's some redundancy here.
It's fine. It's a great shot.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, this show is a masterpiece. It's a singular piece of art.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. Yeah, I have to. It's definitely in the top tier of the past 10 years for me. I don't. I'm not ready to jump on the, like what I think it's better than, or
Right.
so forth and so on. But it's just an incredible masterwork, and in a way, like it's all the more like it hits all the harder because they decided to do it in 2 seasons, and then like that, and that's it. That's one, understandable because of how long it takes to make this show, but also it's like artistically very smart in a lot of ways, just because the longer something goes on, the more the more your chances rise of disappointing some of your audience as it goes on longer. That's why I equally thought it was a master stroke when Watchmen was just a one and done, season.
Well, they'd be inflating the story for the purpose of inflating the story at that point.
Yeah.
And
it's funny because the story that I thought season 2 of this show was going to be was actually only the first arc of season 2.
Yeah, like Act 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very clear that they had big ideas for this season, and if they wanted to, I'd wager they could have dragged it out. But I think they didn't want to sacrifice what they had in mind for this story and for this universe. And yeah, it's just I am so indebted to Stev for like, I don't want to say you pushed me into the show, because ultimately it was.
No, I did. I totally pushed you. I was
Okay.
like, John, you need to watch this. You will love it. It is amazing.
I'm trying to give myself just a little bit of agency.
No, you deserve it.
But yeah,
Jared, I need to warn you. I told Gwyn earlier when he invited me to do this, I'm going to run roughshod over you guys for 2 hours on this show.
Which, by the way, I do want to note, I have heard from Trish, and she is running late because she had the wrong time for us. She thought it started at 7. And she just did her hair. So she's going to be here, but it'll just be a bit late, somewhere between like 6:30 and 6:40 probably. So she's on her way, but this is good because this gives Jared and I a little time to get some words in before both of you are here. And speaking of Jared, so what was your reaction, broad strokes, to season 2?
So you kind of touched on it, Gwyn. The idea was that as a new convert to this show, having just watched the first season recently, but loving it very much and being very excited about season 2, I did not have like years upon years to build up what I thought season 2 would be in my mind. But given the way that season 1 ended, I had a very clear picture of what I thought the central arc of the second and final season would be, which was namely that it effectively Jinx's fall to the dark side, for lack of better terms, and her conflict with Vi. Because it really did seem like it was the story of two sisters. And ultimately, it very much was. It just became so much more because, as you pointed out, the central conflict of Vi versus Jinx takes center stage in the first 3 episodes, and then the story evolves. And it took me a minute to adjust to that because ultimately I was not opposed to that decision, but it was something that I'm like, okay, maybe this is going to take a different shape than I thought. And it really took until I saw the full season for me to understand why they were doing what they were doing. Now, I do think that, as you kind of pointed out too, it's clear that they had very rich ideas for the show. And thinking about another show that we love, Andor, which was originally announced as being a 5-season show. And they're like, actually, this is insanely expensive and logistically nightmarish, and we're going to do it in 2. And I think something similar happened here. But that doesn't mean that this show didn't reach a satisfying conclusion. I just think that some of the story arcs probably got condensed. But man, did they have enough emotional weight to carry it. And in particular, while I was kind of waiting to see how the second season would take shape, we'll get into this in more detail. The episode that made it click for me and then just sing all the way to the end was episode 7, Pretend Like It's the First Time, which for me is by far the best episode of the series. I wasn't sure of that after I watched it the first time. I am now definitely sure of it, at least my personal favorite. And I think that the weight that episode carries and how it ties into the finale and the heroism of my boy Echo was something that I didn't know I needed from that particular hour of television. But all the characters get incredibly powerful emotional arcs. Some seem pretty definitively closed. Others do not. There are definitely certain characters where it feels like they left them open-ended to continue other stories in this world, even if that may be in a different show. But ultimately, when we reached the end, I did feel very satisfied. And I think that, as you guys have pointed out, as a 2-season show, this is pretty close to a masterpiece. I don't know if I would say it's one of my favorite shows of all time, but I do think it is probably one of my favorite animated shows of all time. And it has a potential to climb higher on the ranks on rewatches because I do think the consistent through line of the story was remarkable, and of course the visual storytelling and the music, which I've been listening to nonstop, is top notch beyond all words.
I have 2 really, and this feels so unfair because there's many more that were just amazing, but I was going to say I really have 2 musical moments in this season where I'm like, oh, I'll just say it, holy fuck, that was baller. One is the song that plays over Jinx and Vi's fight in episode 3, which and this show has gone a long way to teaching me to appreciate needle drops in shows where normally I'm like, oh, can't we just have a really great score?
I've almost got goosebumps hearing you say that. You've always been the score guy, but this show just does it right.
But that leads me into my second moment, which is score, and it's during the final episode, and it's when Ambessa is walking up the steps and the chorus.
Yeah, it sounds like Duel of the Fates is about to start or something.
Yeah, and that carries over the fight between her and Caitlin and Mel, which, oh my God, what a freaking great team up. But we'll get there. But yeah, I just those are the 2 moments where I was like, God damn it. And okay, see, this is the problem. I will keep adding on to this list, but also the score when during Jace and Victor's final confrontation and how emotional that gets. just beautiful. Yeah, just absolutely amazing.
So I've got a couple of questions for you guys.
Yeah.
If I can steer the conversation for a moment. I already saw Jared's answer, but Micah asked, what's y'all's favorite character? And I, just was curious to hear you get effusive about your favorite character.
God, I do feel like it shifts and changes because, well, my favorite, I think my favorite character from season 1, I landed on, and he's doesn't factor in that much in this season, but it was Silco in season 1.
Okay.
And especially the bits that we do get of him this season just amplified that. Oh my God. But this season, I think I gotta go with our girl Vi.
Okay.
And there's multitudes of reasons for that, the least of which may not be how jacked she is this season. But that's so superficial. But
no, it's not. Look, you're allowed to thirst after Vi. You are, which is a good damn thing because I'm doing it too.
And especially since for a while now I've had a crush on Haley Steinfeld too, so it all lines up. But yeah, no, I think she's great. My heart broke for her numerous times throughout the season, and then my heart also leapt for her at various points. And yeah, and just. Yeah, well, I'll say the extended thirst for for later on. But can I just say, episode 8?
Yes,
and getting the full view of the back tattoo. And
Vi has her best line in that episode. I don't fucking care.
I don't fucking care. Yeah, as well as like setting this romantic's heart ablaze. Like, yeah, getting the full view of the back tattoo and the muscles.
And the muscles, oh man. Like, Vi, please punch me in the face.
Yeah.
What about you?
With or without the gauntlets?
Without, I wouldn't survive with the like.
Yeah, with the gauntlets, I'm just like, damn it, I'm dying. Without the gauntlets, I'm like, oh, damn it, I'm dying.
Yeah. What about you, Jared? Do you have a favorite character?
I mean, there are so many who are wonderful characters that we could go on about at length, but I did put my answer in the chat already, which is for both season 1 and season 2, the emotional heart of the surprising emotional heart for me of the series has been Echo, which is a surprise. I only say surprising because he is not one of the central characters in many respects you would think of Vi or Jinx or Jace. And he actually disappears for long stretches of the show. Like in season 1, he's in the second arc, but he's behind a mask and we don't know it's him. In this season 2, he's not in the second arc at all. And, I think that may have been part of where I was like kind of wondering where the second season was going, because I was just like, he's gone. Where did he go? But when he came back in episode 7, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what they're doing with the character. And I had touched on in this first stream about the idea of Echo as the League of Legends moniker, as all these characters have, is the boy who shattered time. And seeing how that came to be in this series, and then not only how it played out in that remarkable episode, but how it tied into the finale, where Victor, another character I love, but a character who takes a little bit of a questionable turn towards the end, basically has all these characters on the ropes of becoming mindless slaves. And who is the one character who manages to stop that and give everyone else a chance? Echo.
Yes.
And the character, but in particular for me, and we'll go into this in more detail, it is the relationship that he has with Jinx, or Powder,
Seven.
as I should say, because in episode 7, and thinking back, not just to the story in that episode, an absolutely beautiful what could have been kind of story. I'm a sucker for those kind of what could have been, but I know it can't be kind of stories. But in particular, thinking about how he approached her in the first season, where when Vi was so desperate to save her, he was the character who was saying, your sister is gone. We will honor her memory. I will put her face on the wall, but she is gone. Powder is dead. She is Jinx. And he was willing to fight her to the death for that. But then he couldn't kill her. And then in this season, the fact is, when she is on the verge of giving up herself, the true act of heroism that causes Echo to save everybody is that, what does he use his time machine for? He uses it to save the woman he said was irredeemable. Again and again and again and again and again, until she sees the value in life itself. Yeah, and I'm like, that is a true damn hero right there.
This show believes that everyone deserves a second chance.
Yes.
Yeah, and actually, although I will say, you say, you love those what could have been, but what can't be the stories. But the beauty of what they did in this show is that what could have been actually is somewhere else. Yes. That's why I really love that episode ends with Powder. Yes. To show that this world doesn't just stop, when Echo leaves. It does carry on. And that gives me some solace for some of those characters that we see happy and alive in that world. I just lost it when Silco steps into the shot at the bar. I was like, oh God, really? And the fact that
talking about the power of forgiveness in that moment.
God, and the fact that relationship could be repaired, and that Silco himself, was able to find his way back to a good place. It just, like I said, that stuff just so enriched everything about the character that I already loved in season 1. And even like outside of that, the flashbacks that we get, like that flashback scene in the bar with Silco, Vander, and Felicia is just, so beautiful. And, you both are on the hook now. You got to make this work. It just like, it was, and Silco isn't even really doing much in that scene, but just like seeing him sort of sit there, writing stuff down and looking happy and, having a smile on his face and loving his friends. And, it just was so wonderful. Because that's what we get with this show. It's just these wonderfully fully rounded portrayals of characters who can do some very despicable things, but who are, not entirely irredeemable. They're fleshed out human beings.
Which leads me to my favorite character. Do you see this lady right here?
Mm-hmm.
Not my favorite character anymore. Which I'm totally floored by, because after season 1, I'm like, Vi is it, and she is still S tier character. But from episode 7 on, this whole season, the way they rebranded Jinx just broke me, and it worked for me. The way that they kept giving her moments of empathy. In the first act, she's got, she helps Savika repair her arm. She meets Isha and, kind of takes on a slightly protective role. In the second arc, she is extremely protective of Isha. She learns what it's like to be the big sister. Then you see in episode 7 that beautiful vision of a happy and more or less fulfilled Powder, who still has grief over the loss of her sister, but she is grieving in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And then for her to do the hard thing, take on the big sister role when her own big sister couldn't in the very end to save her, knowing that she was likely not going to survive. She's totally alive, by the way. You will never convince me she's not. There's too much evidence that she's alive.
Yeah.
But there was something about, I mean, I'm a sucker for a redemption arc. It's why I love Zuko. You know, it's why we love Anakin. And it's why I love Jinx. And it might still be Vi, but Jinx came on hard this season, y'all. She really, she was swinging for the fences to make her my favorite.
Well, yeah, I can't argue with any of that except that, you know, this is such a funny line that I hate it, but muscles do a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, like, I don't thirst for Jinx the way I thirst for Vi, but like,
yeah.
Hold on, I just got to get the shot correct here. They're both kissing me at the same time.
Well, I can say that is not my preferred version of the scene, but more power to you.
It's fine. It's my background. It's my fantasy world, right?
No, I will just say, like, you know, as much as what happens in episode 8 is the big talked about moment, in episode 3 when the
someone's
kiss
mic
happens,
is buzzing. I think it might be you, John.
No, I think it's we've had a lot of issues with Jared's.
Oh yeah, it's definitely Jared because you're muted.
Yeah, we haven't figured out a solution for it, so it is what it is. But no, episode 3 when the kiss happens, I was just like, you know, heart pounding, you know, 1,000 times a minute. Just it was so wonderful and beautiful, and I was definitely swooning. So yeah. Yeah, I'm just so happy with the way things turned out for that. Oh, yeah, looks like Stev's taking himself.
I'm here, just give me a second.
Okay. But yeah, no, we talked about this on the last stream. Jared, like, sort of hopes for Vi and Caitlin going into season 2, and my position was I just wanted them to have a little bit of happiness before things inevitably went horrible, and things, you know, for a while weren't looking so great, but they ultimately had, you know, a happy ending. And you know, and it was shocking to me that they actually ended up okay, you know, and you know, we may see them again in the future. It feels like that's open-ended in a way that I think, like other characters in the show, I do think we'll see them pop up in other stuff. But for now, they kind of get their moment to be happy, and you know, and that is certainly not something I was expecting going into the season. So I was very happy about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really can't be overstated, the fact that, you know, these are two prominent lesbian characters, and there is a long-standing trope of, you know, these types of characters not getting the happy ending that they perhaps deserve, and to see that they actually do find each other in the end, and it seems like they're okay, and they're going to be you know, together going forward, united in more ways than one, is a big credit to the show for doing that. You know, and that's not to say that it was all happy and smooth sailing, because the two characters do have conflict throughout the season. You know, yeah. One of the, you know, kind of surprising turns throughout is that Caitlin, who was very much, you know, a paragon of moral virtue, and like the one who was kind of having the idea of what was really going on in season 1, you know, she takes a little bit of a turn herself in season 2. She kind of loses her way, understandably, out of grief for the loss of her mother and anger at Jinx for having perpetuated this act of terror on not only her city but on its citizens. And it drives a wedge between her and Vi. Like, there's that heartbreaking scene when they have their first kiss where Vi, who has been the strong, kind of confident, cocksure one for most of their dynamic, kind of breaks down and tells her, everyone in my life has changed. Promise me you won't change. And Caitlin assures her she won't, and they share a kiss, and it's a beautiful romantic moment. And then Caitlin does change because she was under the impression that Vi was committed to this path of, understanding that her sister was gone, and she was willing to take the shot and kill her, even if it meant sacrificing an innocent child. But that was something that Vi was not willing to do, despite the fact that at the end of episode 8, or perhaps because of it, she had been the one trying to talk down Jace that, like, these casualties happen in war, after he had been responsible for the death of the child. And and it's a heartbreaking moment when Caitlin, is like, why didn't you let me take the shot? And then she slams her gun into Vi's ribs and, like, walks away from her. And then next we see her, she's, under Ambessa's thumb and shacked up with Maddie. Oh, Maddie.
It cracks me up how quickly we turned on Maddie, and it turned out for good reason. But still, it's like I came out of the first act like, Maddie's cool. I like Maddie, and then start of episode 4, it's like, oh no!
I literally went,
I do not like you.
I yelled at my TV when I saw that.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the thing is, they put that in there as kind of a way to, again, drum up the conflict. And then I was wondering how they would handle Maddie. I'm like, are they going to give her a heroic death? Oh no, they are not. They're going to do the opposite of that. But it all is ultimately to pave the way for Caitlin and Vi's reunion, and the fact that Caitlin does in fact still have her moral center and recognizes. Despite having Ambessa pull the wool over her eyes for a little bit, ultimately makes the right choice, and then makes the very selfless choice of allowing Jinx her freedom after everything that she's cost her. And that, of course, leads up to the scene in the cell that John or Gwyn, I should say, has been so rhapsodic about, and rightly so. And the brilliant line that you pointed out, Stev, "Hey, I don't fucking."
Right.
Because the whole rub of that line is, of course, she did very much care. When she and Kate were separated, she was off doing like getting punched in the face as a pit fighter, and falling asleep dreaming about Kate. So she was down bad, but she pulled through it, and now they get to be happy, which is all.
Yeah, that's like, Vi was not taking the breakup well at all. Poor girl.
Yeah, cut the hair, and anytime a woman cuts that much of her hair off, is bad. Not that
but again, it resulted in the even bigger muscles. So I'm like, ultimately, it was worth it.
Peter Griffin in the chat. It's been a minute since I've seen that dude because I don't stream anymore. But hey, Peter Griffin. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say we can really tell we have Stev on the channel because of the people who show up.
I have chaos energy, man. You know this.
Yeah. But no. Yeah. I was going to get back to a comment that was. Oh yeah, when you guys were talking about Jinx being alive, like my first viewing. I was like sad because I'm like, no, she's definitely dead.
Me too.
That's her ending, but I completely missed the little clues with
and there's
with what Caitlin was looking at. And
that's my girlfriend from hell, y'all. Y'all don't even know.
Sorry, I had it stuck in my head that it was going to be 7:00, and I don't know why.
Well, because way back when Jared and I did do our streams at 7:00, but we've been at 6 for a while. So, yeah. It's okay though.
I don't talk about enough nerd shit for me. That's why I'm not here most of the time. If it doesn't have a dragon or a spaceship in it, I'm not interested.
Mm-hmm.
Or hot lesbians, which worked for me this time. Hi, Trish. Who's your favorite character?
Jinx, Victor, Mel.
Okay.
I mean, Vi is of course in there, but like,
I surprised everybody by telling them that Jinx climbed so high she's challenging Vi for top spot.
No, well, I mean, of course, Vi just goes without question, but I'm just saying, like, others that make the top 10, top 5. Yeah. Okay.
Like, here's the thing. Like,
it's not. It's Victor.
Like, yeah, he both like, Victor's like not my type, but also like, yes, I totally get it. So I'm like,
he's a brown-haired sad boy.
And it's like the evidence is that, he's doing some very wrong things by the end of the season, and I'm like,
and we like a bad boy.
But still, like,
is he though? Is he? He's hot. He can do what he wants.
Yeah, if evil while hot.
I support him.
Yeah, I was like, there's not a moment where I was like, oh, that Victor, he's no good. I'm like, no, I would give him a chance. Let's hear him out. Yeah, no, and yeah, I love that this season really did end with the love between those two characters, and just it just felt so full circle in a way, just because of how this it didn't quite open with the two of them, but that relationship between the two of them is just so genuine and wholesome and beautiful, right from the moment they first interact. And so it just felt really right that was sort of the emotional through line of the climax of the story alongside Vi and Jinx.
So, fun fact, me and Trish both watched it like early Saturday, and it broke my heart so bad that I was like in a funk for a good 2 days. And it was Monday, Trish texted me and she's like, are you ready to talk about this yet? Because I'm about to freaking explode. And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm ready. And we got to talking. And how long did we talk about these two ladies' relationship in that one phone call? 30 minutes about this relationship alone?
Yeah. And like, I have to come from it because I'm a dirty dumpster fire shipper. So and I have to evaluate it from that point of view. So yeah, Caitlin and Vi was a point of contention, I guess, because I have some issues with it. And but I will concede by the end of the series, there's a chance to start again, because like after a while, especially in season 2, I was not down with it.
Oh no!
Let me just tell you why, okay? Because I felt like Vi was bending so much to Caitlin, and I mean to the point that she kind of betrayed her values to become a cop, and even though she knew that yes, Jinx is so dangerous that she's not my sister anymore, like she has to be stopped, and she knows that, but when it comes to the point of like hitting your, like Vi just being so traumatized and begging and pleading to, because of her issues of abandonment, and then getting hit with the butt of a rifle, that's usually enough to like say I'm done. with that, because like that's obviously unacceptable. But and we can argue that this is Catelyn at her absolute worst,
which I did argue
yeah.
for you.
But Catelyn was, or Caitlin, excuse me, God.
Drink, she said Catelyn.
It's been drilled into my head for over a decade, okay?
Well, it's so funny because when I first read the Game of Thrones book, and still, like, I read, that character's name as Caitlyn.
Yeah.
And so even though I've heard it over and over in the show as Catelyn, I'm like, still, when I read the book, I'm like, no, it's Caitlyn. So,
but yeah, and then right, and then it's understandable, Caitlyn's motivation, but there is a child in the line of fire, and she is willing to take the chance of hitting the kid to get Jinx, and that's fucked up. So, yes, it is at her very, very worst, but she also moves on rather quickly from Caitlyn. I'll not say that she has any kind of emotional investment in, God, what's her name?
Maddie,
excuse me. Yes, Maddie. But, and then letting Ambessa just kind of run wild and with whatever she wants to do, and then also using her power to basically further militarize law enforcement in the Undercity. That's kind of hard to walk back from. I mean, after not that you can't. I fully agree. I fully believe in that. There is room for redemption, that people can redeem themselves. But I think it's not really until the end of the story, when the central conflict between Vi and Caitlyn, which is Jinx, is removed from the table, that they can finally start over. Because I don't really see a way in which Jinx still exists in this world where Caitlyn and Vi can be together, because it'll be something that's going to be kind of weird if your girlfriend has executed or imprisoned your sister, and that's going to be kind of weird if your girlfriend helps her sister stay on the lam. And what else can be done? Because no matter what happens in that world, Jinx is still a wanted criminal for murder, and that's not going away. Even though I know she's redeemed herself in so many other ways, but that's just not going away in Piltover.
She said it herself, like, if you want to break this, killing is a cycle, and the only way to stop it is to walk away. So that's what she did.
Ultrasound. Wait, oh no, I didn't. I got my
I mean, okay, yes, but Caitlyn is also the one that lets Jinx out of prison. So,
yep.
Yeah, of course, when she realizes that she has screwed up, like she never should have let Ambessa gave her the keys to power.
You got to let your characters fail, man. You got to let them do the wrong thing so that they can grow to do the right thing.
Of course, yeah, of course, but I don't think they're owed a romance.
Okay, I guess that's a fair point of view to have. But
that's another question.
But Vi
I still disagree. Yeah, Vi deserves the romance she wants.
Of course she does.
Yeah,
of course she does.
The one she wants happens to include Caitlyn.
All I'm saying is that it really, I don't know how they would get past the Jinx question if Jinx were still there.
I think that's probably true, though. I think you're probably right about that.
I mean, at least now, I think it's like now they can actually start over.
Yeah, okay, just let me be happy in my ship.
Look at my background, for crying out loud.
I am not saying, I am never, ever, ever saying don't ship your ship. I am never saying that.
Right, you would be a hypocrite if you did.
I'm like we all don't know one of your chief
of course
ships,
I'm like, that's
Yeah.
That's a
No,
pretty
I'm
messed up.
like that's exactly it. Problematic. There's a problem. How do they overcome the problem? And like I believe there is absolutely a way that they can absolutely overcome that problem.
Can I?
Look, I shipped it. They're happy now. That's all I'm concerned
Okay,
with.
look, I'll just say too, and this is what I really have felt like throughout the series. It's not that Caitlin doesn't care about Vi; she certainly does. It's just that every single time she always chooses duty.
Yeah. And guess what? Kate fell in love with that person that choose their duty over and over and over again. So that must be something she admires about her and values about her.
Of course, okay.
Yeah. I think we were kind of touching on this before you hopped on, Trish. The idea that Caitlin does stumble and fail and lose her way in the middle of this season, and I think that we are rightly supposed to question her throughout that entire arc, because we're very much coded to see that that Ambessa is not on the side of right, even if she does have some understandable motivations, and that Caitlin is allowing her grief and her rage to drive her, decision making. It very much, not to bring everything back to Star Wars, it is very much kind of a dark side turn in that way. And my philosophy, as I've always said, is with redemptions, is not that everything that you've done does, like, if you do a good act and redeem yourself, it does not wipe out everything that you did before. It's the idea that it's never too late to make a better choice.
Of course,
and that is. But now, whether that means that Vi should have forgiven Kate for everything that she did, that's an open to interpretation. I do agree that the jinx factor is kind of a complication, because, let's say it bluntly, Jinx killed Caitlyn's mother. And even though she tells
and
her,
a lot of other people,
and a lot of other people.
Jinx is, obviously we love Jinx because she's been through a lot of trauma in her life, and especially this season where she makes her way back from the abyss of total darkness. But she has done a lot of wrong things. This is not an innocent girl, so I
blood on his hands.
So, like, for me, it's very understandable that, especially like Caitlin is, being driven by the death of her mother, and she's that trauma of, of losing that person in your life. The most important person in your life is just can be so painful and hurtful, and she's being driven by that. So, like, for me, it's, I don't like the things that Caitlin does this in the earlier parts of this season, but I do understand why she's doing it, and that's why it's so good when she comes back from the edge of that, and so I do think Vi is waiting for that, and and I do think that I love the turn that we get in the second act, where you think that Caitlin is just still being sort of stubborn and boneheaded, and has turned on Vi when actually it's a switcheroo. And I just found that very cathartic. After being disappointed with Caitlin, throughout much of the season, to see that she does sort of, it's that emotional connection with Vi again that brings her back in the realization that this is not some abstract thing she's out there to hunt a monster, but actually it's Vi's father. And I think that really sort of shakes her loose from this hold that Ambessa has on her. So yeah, for me, it's like, no, I don't like a lot of the things she does, but I understand why she allows herself to be pulled in by Ambessa, and and then once she comes back from that, the character is just so endearing to me, in large part because of the love that Vi has for her, and so yeah, it's I love the character. So flawed, yes, makes mistakes, of course, but I still, you know, I think she's a great character, and was very happy to see her and Vi find their way back to one another. But there's lots of other stuff going on this season.
There is. I have another question. I have another big question for everybody.
Okay.
And there's no good answer for this. But what's the theme of this show? What is this show? It's a piece of art. Art is trying to convey thoughts and ideas. What's the theme? What is this show trying to tell us?
That's such a complicated.
It is. Like, it's a very dense show. There's a lot of layers to it. So I'll start then, since I kind of have a what I think is a good answer to this. Not the perfect answer, but I think this show is always trying to say you can always choose to stop the cycle of violence and make something better. Like, there are so many opportunities where so many characters could have chosen to not answer violence with violence, and things would have been massively different, which we see in episode 7. Silco early in season 1 talks about the base violence necessary for change, which there's some truth in what he's saying there. But if every time somebody answers violence with violence every time, then the world just becomes nothing but violence. And this show wants us to imagine a world that isn't like that, while showing us a world that is very much like that until the very end of the show.
I think that's a really good answer, Stev, because ultimately this show is a show about, progress and humanity and the intersection of the two. That's really what it boils down to with Victor's final, lines and his revelation, the idea that, the pursuit of perfection and like this technological ideal that may not actually ultimately lead to the utopia that you think it will. Because the idea of the end to perfection is not, or perfection is the end of the pursuit. For me, like, this show has, like, all of its titles are kind of drawn from quotes directly from the show. Most of them. And for me, I think about the idea of, bring it back to, again, my favorite episode, and the idea I just found so powerful and so moving. I would say the idea of sometimes taking a leap forward means leaving a few things behind. And
what a heartbreaking line.
And the thing is, there's so many layers to that. There's obviously the direct emotional connection between Jinx or Powder and Echo in that scene. There's the idea of Vi and Powder and Jinx. The core of the first season was the idea of, is she Powder, is she Jinx? Can Vi actually accept and love Jinx as the person that she is now? But the reason I think that I would probably distill it down to that idea, sometimes, taking a leap forward means leaving a few things behind, is that does not make a value judgment one way or another. You can make progress. You can do, this technology, this advancement that they're seeking is not something that is inherently bad or evil, but you will leave something behind. And it's a question of what. This is kind of Heimerdinger's lesson, throughout the entirety of the show, is that he's always the one preaching caution. He's always the one like, it needs more time. You need to, work. You need to put, make sure it's safe. And Jace and Victor had rightly pushed back. Humans don't live for 300 years. We need this help now. Victor was like, we need to, bring Hextech to the people, make it, help their lives now because they're suffering now. But in doing so, look what he left behind, what he was willing to leave. And then the show makes a comment on that, but the show also makes the idea that, you know, sometimes you have to make that leap forward. And yeah, Heimerdinger, we'll get to Heimerdinger. I think it's funny that, you know, he wound up in the Paradise universe, and right at the end he's like, yep, actually I'm going to stay here. I don't know if he actually, where he wound up, but long and short of it is that I think that in a show about technology and progress and advancement, but also humanity and all its contradictory inherent flaws and the idea that perfection probably is not attainable, at least in the form that you think, really all these characters had to make a value judgment of what am I what am I seeking, how do I want to move forward, and what am I willing to leave behind to get there, whether it's grief, whether it's trauma, whether it's, you know, humanity, whether it's, you know, revenge, anger. Like, the characters who make the determination to leave those destructive elements behind are the characters who end up being happy, and the characters who choose to leave their humanity behind, like characters like Ambessa, are the characters who ultimately fail. And so that's why I think it's probably, if I had to sum up a show in one line,
Yeah, I just want to note real and quick. I don't know anything about the lore of League of Legends, but even so, I'm like, no, Heimerdinger is not dead.
So I know a sliver about it because I have a good friend called Egg that is very knowledgeable in, I won't say very, but kind of knowledgeable in legal lore. And I think he said that Yordles, which is what race Heimerdinger is, they literally can't die. Like, if they would die, they teleport to their home village. But so maybe he teleported to his home village. Maybe he plane shifted again. But yeah, he's not.
Basically, they just start back over at the first level.
I don't even think they just bloop. I'm safe. Back home.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really. It felt very much like this is him, you know, like zipping out of this story. He's, you know, fulfilled his purpose here, but he's going to pop up again elsewhere. I, you know, it's, you know, like we always say, we didn't see a body, so.
So, well, yeah. We didn't see a body with Sky either, but we did see a body turning to dust. So maybe that is different, which we also did not see with Heimerdinger. Huh. By the way, street musician Buster Heimerdinger is just the best, man.
That was not on my bingo card.
When I was watching him busk in the streets, like, I was like, this guy was running Piltover, like, you know, just a few episodes ago, and now he's like playing for coppers in the streets and seems like he's having a ball. And I'm like, I get why he's like, actually, this universe is pretty sweet. Like, oh, maybe we should just stay here.
I mean, yeah, it was nice to see an alternate timeline where Jinx is well adjusted and happy, and a bunch of people are still alive and happy.
Oh, that's right. We were talking about the alternate timeline before you got here,
and without the need for arcane technology. Like, they had solved their problems without it in this timeline. At least looks like they're on their way to a thriving community. Yeah, I like getting back to the other. What do you think this show is about? And like, I do agree with Jared that I think primarily it is about progress, but the push and pull between the need to make progress and the warnings against progress, and how that intersects with time and perspective, because you have, you know, someone like Heimerdinger who can live many human lifetimes, and his perspective is obviously very different on progress. But it's totally understandable where someone like Victor and Jace are like, no, people need things now. They're dying. Their quality of life is bad. I mean, it also is a pity that their wonderful, you know, in research and you know, inventions never somehow trickled down to benefit Undercity in all that time. It always it just made wealthier people more wealthy. Um, but it's also too. I mean, even when Victor becomes much more godlike in perspective, it's his perspective is a lot different on progress. That it in a godlike short term, he sees it as like these humans are, they just cannot help but fuck themselves over. Like um, they need to be like literally told like they need to be literally controlled to be saved from themselves. And Victor's character, or rather, I should say, the Arcane. Um, I don't think its perspective is evil. It's just that it thinks it's doing what's best for humanity, to ultimately save them. That their flaws make them a danger to themselves. Um, it's also Victor's godlike perspective plus talking to Jace in the end that gets him to also see that they have like humanity also deserves a chance to save itself too.
Yeah, it harkens back to a line that Caitlin has. Her mother has just died, and she's talking to Jace at the park, and she says, it's not a direct quote, but something along the lines of, "Hex tech might keep us alive, but it's not what's going to save us."
Yep. And that's very true in reality, is technology is not going to save us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like there's no value judgment either way, like you said, on yes progress or no progress. And in the end, even a god doesn't know everything that's going to happen. We just make a decision that we can live with. And we can heed the warnings, but we also have to take some risks too to help improve people's lives. But in the end, nobody really knows what's going to happen. You could have so many unintended consequences, both good or bad, from some new thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Can I just say, there's a great, lively conversation going on in the chat too that I'm trying to keep up with. It's very good. And
I know I've never it's been a while since I've had this problem because normally we sometimes get a few people in the chat, but it's usually relatively slow, so I can sort of keep up with it. Now I'm like, no, they're just having their own thing over there, and I have to make sure I'm focusing on the actual conversation. But no, this is great. I love it.
Yeah, I just need to know how to say Mike's last name, because I've said it 3 different ways in my head, and they're all amazing. But I need to know. I need a pronunciation guide, Mike, because it could be. I think it's either. I think it's probably Detheridge. Okay, because I thought it was going to be.
I was thinking it was Detheridge too, like Melissa Etheridge.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Detheridge.
Yeah.
But Detheridge. Okay, I like it. Or Rage or Detheridge. It's awesome.
Now, I love everything you guys have touched on, so it takes the burden off of me. So I'm just gonna do the cheesy theme, which is that basically love conquering all, and human relationships being at the being really most important, because that at the end of the day, that's what saves everything here. And when characters falter, it's because they forget those familial and bonds and friendship and and all that stuff. And then it's when they find their way back to that's their salvation. And
you're right. Actually, it helps Echo with his connection with he gets a connection with Powder and realizes like it's worth fighting for. It's what brings Vi and Kate back together. It's what stops Victor in the end with him and Jace.
Yeah.
And before he's basically scrubbed out of existence, Warwick Vander, it's that connection with his daughters that stops him in the moment. It's Jinx is ready to die at the end of Act 1. Ready to die. Ready for Vi to crush her face. I'm glad it's you. And then Isha happens. And it's that connection. It wasn't technology that made her want to be better. It was a relationship with someone else that she genuinely cared about. And that holds true for pretty much everybody in this show.
Yeah, I just think it's such a beautiful story because at the end of the day, like even the final episode, which is full of lots of big action and mayhem and, you know, all that stuff at the end of it, it really all comes down to these characters and their love for each other. And I just find that so beautiful because as I've gotten older, I've found that, you know, when I was a teenager, big action sequences in movies could sustain me. But as I've gotten older, there needs to be a lot more to it to really, you know, keep me emotionally connected to what's going on. And I was a little bit worried when this episode started off because we have just a small opener and then it plunges right into the action. I'm like, oh no, is this just going to be a full episode of nonstop action? And to a certain degree, it is that, but it's laced with all this great character drama.
Yeah, like Manny getting shot in the freaking head.
Yeah, and everything is very emotional. And and we're worried about the character relationships and how they interact with each other. And then what ends up saving the day, yes, as you mentioned earlier, Jared, Echo is a big part of that. And I'm actually going to talk in a second about why I love Echo's story so much this season. But after that, after he's done what he needs to do to create the opportunity for Jace to reach Victor, that is what saves the day. It is the love between these two men and the fact that Victor from the future knows that the only thing that could work is Jace. And because he's the one who can reach him, he's the one who can tell him this, and the fact that that's the key to to the whole thing is so beautiful. And I think it's something that's so easily forgotten when you have big spectacles. But because this show from the very first episode has been rooted in character and relationships, and emotion, I just think it was just impeccably well done. And the climax of this, season is just so great. So that we can have those moments of like badass action imagery. I talked earlier about the moment when Mbessa is walking up the steps and the music, and so we can have those like, oh my God, this is so badass, but also because that scene is not only rooted in this antagonism between Mbessa and Caitlin, who has been manipulated by Mbessa throughout the season, but also Mel, who's Mbessa's daughter. And it's what's been layered in since the last couple episodes of season 1 of this, disappointment that Mbessa has in her daughter because she's not the wolf. And just everything just comes together so well in this final episode, so that it's not just unrelenting action. It's beautiful.
There's a lot of action.
Yeah.
But they've earned it up to this point by laying the groundwork with the emotional stories with their characters and giving space for for those things to tie up satisfactorily in the moment. It's not go, 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 go. It's go, 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 breathe for a second. Go, 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 breathe for a second.
Well, it's the same thing that works so well in, I use Return of the King as an example. Is you can have all this awe-inspiring big action, but then don't forget to pull back from all that and check in on Gandalf and Pippin talking about the afterlife. And so you got to make sure that balance is right. And sometimes that's forgotten, and then that's when you get into exhaustion from from just watching a bunch of action. Now I do need to talk about why I loved Echo's story so much. And Jared, you talked early on in the stream about the fact that he's not actually in much of this season. He disappears for a long while. But this is one of my favorite devices in storytelling, especially science fiction storytelling, especially when they go into time travel. I love the device of the character who disappears for a long stretch and then comes in, has an episode entirely devoted to them, especially when it has to do with time travel or an alternate timeline or whatever, because then then it makes so much of the story about them and their journey. One of the greatest examples of this is the character of Desmond in Lost, where he's in the first couple episodes of season 2. He's not in most of the rest of the season, pops in for the finale, and the entire finale, it's like a 2-hour movie about the life of Desmond Hume, and it all of a sudden makes the entire show about him. And that's sort of what I felt like episode 7 of this show was. It was just getting to spend so much time with Echo. And, and seeing him experience this other world and getting so wrapped up emotionally in, the what could have been for him and so many other characters. And just my heart just simultaneously broke and sang for the love between him and Powder, and the dance sequence, which, by the way, we haven't even talked about what a tour de force the animation
dude was. I literally had to pull something up just for that. I'm gonna change my background again because I got another image that I pulled up just to make a point about the animation. Let's see if I can get this to work the way I want it to. That is a single frame of animation from this show. That is when Maddie pulled literally the muzzle flash, blacks out the screen, and you get this white outline. But look at that. Look at the smile that they gave her. This evil grin. That they go hard in this show. This is literally one frame, so it's not even animated.
What? And by the way, can I just say, I did enjoy your warmth. That was the moment where it was like, okay, you need to die. And
right?
Yeah. God, it's just so. Get the little face of a little baby angel.
Oh yeah, we all fell in love with her.
Yeah, just a cute little baby with the cute little cheeks. Yeah, then total sociopath.
When we meet her and she's like, it's nice to know there's still some good ones. I'm on a rewatch. That's God damn. But it's.
I'm sorry. No. Yeah, I know we're still talking. Wait, no, go ahead. Keep talking about the animation. We'll go back later.
Well, no, I just I brought it up just because of that dance sequence with Echo and Powder. It's just so beautiful, and they did so many really amazing, ballsy, like experimentations with the animation, just so many like sequences off the top of some of the episodes where they just went wild with different animation styles. And I'm like, it's the kind of stuff that I love because it's fully embracing the fact that this is an animated story, and that and to go all the way with that and say, we're going to show you things that we could never do in live action, and yeah, it's just like, I just almost don't even have words for it. It's just made me so happy, and they just did so many different things this season that I felt like they were just. It felt like every episode they got to be like, okay, what kind of cool shit are we gonna do for this one? And yeah, I raved about the animation style in season 1 and all the cool stuff they got to do with that, but this just took it to a whole new level, and I can't wait to see what they do with the next show. Where they'll raise the bar from here, because what they did this season was absolutely spellbinding.
Yeah, it's intentionally beautiful animation. Like animation, you don't have quite the same spontaneity as you do in live action, because everything is, planned out and scripted and storyboarded years in advance. But that allows them to layer in things that are like, you don't even necessarily see it on the first watch, but the intentionality is very much there. And one of the things I'll just point out is something that Joda had mentioned in the chat that I was going to bring up, which is the Echo and Powder dance scene. It's shot for most of it at 4 frames per second. What is Echo's time travel device? The limit is 4 seconds. That is just one of those little things that you don't pick that up, but it's like, obviously that was intentional.
I've already watched that music video about a half a dozen times. I can hear it. I don't speak French at all, but like I can hear it, and I'm yeah. The music in the show is so good.
Ma Meilleur Ennemi is the song title, and I listened to it so many times. I've read the English translation of it. The lyrics are beautiful. Just to, like it translates to you're the best thing that ever happened to me, but also the worst thing that ever happened to me. On the day that I met you, maybe I would rather that it never happened to me. The worst of all blessings, the best of all curses. I should stray away from you, but as the saying goes, better than alone it is to be in bad company. And I'm like, God damn it, that's so
right.
Speaking of that sequence, like one of the things that I loved, and I don't know if maybe I'm just misremembering this, but even if it's not an exact like recreation of the shot, it evoked it for me when Jinx actually walks in and it's like a shot of her feet. It really brought me back to their face off in episode 7 of season 1. And I just love the
hard, y'all. That's another that song from season 1 on the bridge. That song goes hard.
Dynasties and dystopia.
So I just love the symmetry of that. This is a very different dance between the two characters, and
there's just
so good.
This is a show that 5 years from now, people are going to be submitting theses for their bachelor's degrees about this show. They're going to be dissecting this and writing, academic papers. I fully believe that they really have done. Riot did something special with this one, and a lot of that is the incredible writing. A lot of that is the incredible animation, and the music, and the voice acting, and the editing. So when everybody brings their absolute A+ performance, you get a really good show, it turns out. And one of the things that really, I hope I don't derail the vibe of this, but like, I haven't heard anybody complaining about this show being too woke. Despite the fact that there are strong female characters, lesbians, people of color in positions of power, all of that is there, but it's because there's so much depth to every one of the characters.
Well, but also I think, and animation just has a different audience.
You might be right about that too.
Because Jared, I don't know if it's we who talked about it or if I'm just remembering our good friends at Force Center talking. There's usually some overlap when it comes to Star Wars stuff. But I know that the subject of like sort of fan discourse came up around the show The Bad Batch, and it's like it's one of, not that I'm sure on Twitter or X there were probably negative comments to be found about The Bad Batch, but I didn't go looking for them. But the discourse wasn't as loud and as obnoxious, because I just think that the people who hate watch like The Acolyte or Obi-Wan Kenobi or any of the other even Mandalorian and Ahsoka, all that stuff, a lot of those people are not necessarily watching the animated material. And so I think that you find a lot more sort of just love and dedication in the sort of fan circles for those animated shows. And I feel like
I also deleted Twitter, so
yeah. Well, yeah, so did I.
High five, buddy.
Somebody else.
So I think that's at play too. I just think that you get a different audience with animated content. And as much as I would love for many, many more people to be watching animated shows, it does have the silver lining of, I think the discourse is better.
Two of my three favorite shows this year have been animated. This and Vox Machina.
Yeah.
Were both fantastic. Fallout's the other one. If you haven't watched Fallout, go watch Fallout. It's freaking great. The voice actress for Jinx, Ella Purnell, is basically the main character of Fallout. It's fantastic. Go watch Fallout. Thank you. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, and we don't want to start going down the Vox Machina road.
No, I'm not going to. I mentioned them. Don't get me started. Yeah, don't pull that chain. Or I'll back up 4 seconds and turn this into a whole different podcast.
Needless to say, everybody, if you haven't seen that show, go watch it.
It's really good.
Yeah.
You watched it.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I absolutely adore that show. See, I was about to talk about something. No, we need to stay focused.
I told you I was going to run roughshod over you. I warned you ahead of time.
All right. Can I ask a very, very simple question?
Well, actually, can you hold that thought for a second? Okay. Because I do want to go ahead and do the mid-roll, because because we're over the hour mark, and we'll get through it real quick. It's a very small mid-roll, Stev. We don't have Patreon subscribers, so it's just a glorified like little tiny break. But I posed this question to Jared. Do you think you're going to get out to the movies this week?
I am going to try for you, Gwyn, but also for my own sake. This past week was Thanksgiving. Mercifully, I had a couple days off of work. I was able to do some catch up. So I'm in a better place when it comes to everything work related. I'm going to try and go out to see Wicked, which I know you're very keen to talk about. Also Gladiator 2, because my plans fell through, and I am going to do the double feature. I'm not going to cast that aside, but
wait, so you haven't seen that yet?
I haven't seen it yet because the plans fell through because of work again. But I am going to see them both. If I will prioritize Wicked if we're going to talk about it on the stream, because I know it's important to you, Gwyn. I know you've been, pushing pretty hard. And the thing is, if I had reservations about the movie to the same extent, I might be like, You're going a little bit tough, but I know that you've mentioned that it would be a strong end to the year. It is a very big movie. People have seen
well, see, but now I'm just happy
so,
that you didn't. Now I'm just happy that you didn't prioritize Gladiator 2.
I did prioritize it, and then life took precedence, and I am still keen to see that movie, but it's not going to be the.
But in honor of Jeff Goldblum, who is in Wicked, life found a way.
More like. More like the demands on my time found a way. But yes.
Okay, so we're kind of giving the game away. Hopefully next Sunday at 6:00, we'll be talking about the first part of the new Wicked adaptation, which obviously everybody who in the Slack and who follows me on social media knows that I went wild for it and I love the movie. So hopefully we'll be talking about that. If not, we have an alternate game plan, which I can't believe this is the backup plan, but that's how the world works. If we can't do Wicked, we'll be talking about the new Netflix series coming out, Black Doves, starring one Keira Knightley. Which is, so if we don't get to that this weekend or next weekend, then that'll be one of the first things we do in January.
I just need to make sure I understand you correctly. Keira Knightley is your backup plan?
I know. I feel really bad about it.
Are you trapped in a room and being forced to do something against your will right now? Is this a desperate cry for help?
Well, see, here's the thing, but I haven't seen the show yet.
Okay.
So it's okay. Let's be real. There's not really any chance I'm not going to thoroughly enjoy the show. But still, it's an unknown, there's a lot of unknown factors with it. Whereas I know I cannot wait to talk about Wicked. So, so yeah, but that's okay. It's just going to be a difference of a couple of weeks. So we're fine. Plus this is, but see, this is the real plan. By postponing that discussion, I can urge other people to watch the show and therefore take an active part in the chat when we do discuss it. So that is the plan. But so yeah, fingers crossed that next weekend we'll be talking about Wicked, and then the Sunday after that, we're locked in on talking about The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. So can't wait for that. And that'll be it for the year for us. And then because I actually will be going to Maryland to see my family for Christmas. So, and I'm driving up with my dad. So it'll be an extended road trip. Pray for me, please. But hopefully we'll both make it back in one piece. So yeah, that's that's pretty much it. Do you guys we have multiple guests who have done other things. Do you guys want to promote anything while we're doing this mid-roll?
Trish, you want to go first? You got anything?
Not anything specific lately. But of course, I have a podcast with my podcasting partner, Little Wolfbird. We're the Silent Sisters podcast. Doing a lot of coverage of. We did a lot of coverage of House of the Dragon, and we're still working on some more stuff. It's just that it's really busy this time of year.
The only thing I want to plug is, hi, I'm Stev. I would like to be your dungeon master. I am a professional dungeon master. I'm good at it. I've run games for that guy, and I play with this one here on the regular, which is why I called her my girlfriend from hell when she joined, because we're playing in a game together where we kind of have a romantic relationship between our characters, and we're literally in hell. It's fun.
I have to talk to our DM about that because she's got some shit in my.
Yeah. It's a mess. It's messy, and I love it.
Messy.
But I have taught since COVID started, I don't know, 30 people how to play D&D. if you want to learn to play, come on, send John a message. He knows 5 different ways to get a hold of me. I'll teach you if you don't know. I have several games going. If nothing that on my schedule matches what you need, I will endeavor to make a game for you. I need more players. This is how I get paid. Please come play with me. Yes, D&D.
Yeah, S. Corneo. Yeah, absolutely. Get in touch with Stev. Get in touch. He'll make it happen for you.
Oh yeah, it's what I do. I love spreading that hobby, and I'm pretty good at teaching people how to get the most out of their game experience, I think.
Yep.
I will say that even though my own gaming experience did not last very long, and I feel guilty about that, but also the experience that I did have gave me some time of sort of experimenting with how I wanted to be represented. My character's name was Gwyn in the D&D game that I was playing, and so that eventually led to taking on that name and my non-binary identity that I'm currently having. So really thank you just for giving me that experience.
D&D has so many mental health benefits. It's really hard to list them all. And that is one of them, though. It lets you express yourself in new ways.
Yeah. But yeah. So I see that while we were doing the mid-roll, it was killing me because people were talking about the jail cell scene. And
oh, you mean the scene, the scene between those 2 very good friends?
The gals and pals. And sometimes one friend just likes to wear another friend like a hat.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Oh wait. I told this story in the Slack, but this was so hilarious because, so I'm still, I'm living with my dad, because obviously before we lost Mom, she had been going through a lot of health problems for years. So, so any story I have to say about watching stuff inevitably involves my parents. But I was watching. I was watching the final 2 episodes of the series, in the middle of the day because I was taking a couple days to move through the episodes because I didn't want to rush all the way to the end. So it was earlier in the day. I was out in the living room and I was watching episode 8, and the scene comes on. And that is the moment when my dad chooses to come out into the kitchen.
You're a grown-ass adult, Gwyn, but it's still awkward as hell to have your parents come walk in.
It was really awkward. So I just had this kind of vibe going on.
I would have been like, Dad, check this shit out. That's hot.
Yeah, well, it's even funnier because I don't think he thinks of animation as adult content either. It was the same thing. It was the same thing with my mom. Anytime something animated was on, it's
that's a kid's show.
A kid show. Yeah. So it felt just really weird. Just
right.
But yeah, no. Aside from that, though, great. Loved watching the scene. But yeah. Let me see. Oh yeah, and this was something that we discussed on Sanri's Twitch stream. I heard this and I was like, no, that is not okay. And
yeah, I was listening to Sanri's stream last week, and they were talking about it there too. It's it's on a hard drive somewhere. All you need to do is hack it. And I'm like, I'm going to start Googling how to hack. I'm
wondering if they cut it back because, Like in season 1, they had a scene between Jace and Mel, and it never went that far. Like you really didn't see anything. I'm wondering if they decided to kind of like tone it down a little bit so that it didn't look like they were treating a lesbian relationship as more pornographic and than the straight counterpart. I understand where you guys are coming from, and I was kind of disappointed that we didn't get to see more of Jason Mel. But maybe they just want to show that they're treating it differently than a straight counterpart.
Well, I think the conversation that was being had was that it had more to do with the rating, because if the show was rated TVMA, then the games would have to be. Isn't that the discussion that was being had, Stev, or am I misremembering that?
Oh, I'm not the expert on this, but I think the idea that they want to treat it like it was very hot, but it wasn't hotter than, say, Mel and Jace from season 1. Like, I feel like it was kind of a similar level there. And I think that's a good idea for them to not make it too raunchy, because you're right. Then it is just like, we're just sexualizing the women.
It looks more exploitative.
Yeah. And to be clear, a lot of this is tongue in cheek. Like the scene was beautiful. The scene was beautiful. I actually loved it exactly as it was, and it was very hot. Like,
it was.
And this is what AO3 is for, guys.
No, but what I do find interesting about the conversation is actually the whole rating thing. That was the reason why they, sort of tamed it down, so to speak. Because you look at the rest of the show and you're like, how is this show not TVMA? Because of like, I guess maybe it's because they control like the amount of blood maybe we see in the violence and stuff. But this is a very violent show, and this is thematically a very dark show. Like, it seems wild to me that the show is rated TV-14. But it just shows that animation does operate on this sort of a different wavelength, and they can get away with things in an animation, whereas if this was a live action show and they were showing this stuff, like, it would be rated R.
Yeah.
So
I'm reading the chat, and so I know why Trish is going crazy on the keyboard right now. Yep. I knew it.
So actually for me, that's like sort of the interesting part of the conversation, because I just think it's wild that the rest of the show is considered, that they had to tone that down, but everything else in the show is like perfectly fine.
Look, you can't show a boobie or say too many bad words. Horrific. Well, I mean, it's South Park, so take it with a grain of salt, but South Park has often done some really great social commentary. And in the South Park movie, Cartman's mom says, horrific, deplorable violence is okay, so long as nobody says any naughty words.
Yeah. But, yeah, so, but I don't know, I'm glad they could get away with so much, because the show has a very hard edge, and I'm glad for that. Because it's just what they're able to do is just, really good. It's funny because I keep going back to our original conversation about the show, Stev, and we had just done a stream on Here Be Dragons about the first season of The Bad Batch, which I was so happy about. Jared and I are of one mind. We, both adore that show. And you were less enthusiastic because, and part of that was, just we all enjoyed different things. But,
sure.
but also part of that was like, I was talking about how it had sort of taken, what the Clone Wars had did, and sort of the maturity of the show had upped with the quality of the animation and the sort of sophistication of the storytelling, but you were coming off of watching Arcane, and so when I finally did watch the series, I'm like, okay, this is why what I had sort of built up for Bad Batch, it didn't quite jive with where you were at the time, and like it made so complete sense. And because, and don't get me wrong, like I'm definitely not backing down from my stance on the Bad Batch, but I can appreciate, like, you know, the kind of experience that, you know, that you were like vibing off of with this show. And I'm so glad that I did end up, which by the way, we did a stream on this because I felt bad about making you do the Bad Batch stream. And
Doing the Bad Batch? Yeah, I remember.
Like, I owe him one. So, and it turned out to be the best thing in the world because I just had such an absolute blast, not only watching the first season of the show, but talking with you about it. And also I was going through some, you know, stuff that week, and it's the best thing in the world when dealing with your own sort of emotional turmoil to plunge yourself into the emotional turmoil of fictional characters.
Right.
So, yeah. But, yeah. It's somebody mentioning Isha. I just want to talk about, like, I went ahead and did do a second viewing last night and this morning of the show, and like, you know, Isha just broke my heart, you know, even more because it is like she was like a miniature, you know, Jinx, and it's just like I love that, you know, she's the one who was able to get through to Jinx and you know, allowed Jinx to sort of come back to herself, because when the season starts off, she's very much going off of that end of season 1 energy where she's kind of losing it, and you know, having all her hallucinations and everything. And it's her time with Isha that really centers her. Mm-hmm. And I think one of my biggest fears coming out of episode 6 was that the loss of Isha would plunge her back.
And it did.
It did.
It's like, well, yes, but it very much, but that would be the end of her story.
Oh, I see.
That it would just cause a downward plunge, and she would give in to her sort of worst instincts, and there would be no, like, it would be that we got a glimpse of, you know, who Jinx could be, that sort of light at the end of the tunnel, and the fact that even though she does sort of succumb back to the darkness for a while, like, her impulse is like not to sort of rain hell on everything, but that the only out she sees is taking, you know, her life. She doesn't want to make anybody else suffer, and thank God for Echo, you know, showing up and with, you know, his great
always a dance with you.
Yeah. With his great time device, which it just was. I love that. Speaking of which, I love that bit with Heimerdinger in episode 7 with the, you know, I forget what the actual line is, but what were the indicators?
He's got Heimerdinger's fur on his face still.
It's like, it's 4 seconds, trust me.
Right, yeah, it's 4 seconds, bro. So, Gwyn, Jared, Trish, I'm going to step away and go to the restroom. John, you know, I'm sorry, Gwyn, you know me. I got ADHD. I'm going to go have a cigarette, but I'm going to come back because I'm loving this conversation.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to take...
I'm going to save some things until you come back. So,
okay, but yeah. I got to take my 10-minute break because I also drank this whole thing of soda, and it now needs to go away. Like, I am done renting my drink.
Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead. We need to balance out the time between.
I'm going to listen to you on my phone while. Yeah, I know I talk a lot, but I'm listening in on my phone, so I'm still here.
And when you get back, it just there's somebody asking for, where they can go to get more D&D and stuff.
Yeah, actually, you know what, John? I will drop a link in the chat because I have I'm a mod in this chat, so I should be able to just I have my own D&D server that I coordinate all my games through. So yeah, I'll just drop that link in there in a second. Cornejo. All right, I'll be back in a minute, guys.
All right, cool.
Yeah, while Stev is away, and I do want to get his thoughts on this. I do want to bring up a couple of what Mike Deathridge's points that he's been making about talking about Jinx and her relationship with Echo and their connection with Isha, because I think he really says it all when he has the quote. He says, Isha was so important for showing Jinx she could love and be loved again. Mm-hmm. And I think that is at the heart of it, because when we had our conversation, Gwyn, about Arcane Season 1, we talked about the climactic confrontation that Jinx staged between Vi and Silco, and how it kind of reflected the dueling sides of her Powder Jinx identity. And I was of the opinion that in that scene, even though Jinx ends up gunning Silco down, Silco wins in that confrontation because he makes it clear to Jinx that he accepts who she is and who she has become, and that she is, and that he loves her as she is now, broken as she sees herself and all. And Vi was, understandably, but perhaps misguided in that moment, kept trying to get her to be Powder, and she couldn't be that version of the person that she was anymore, even though there is still some of Powder in there, and we see that throughout the series. And when I think where I misunderstood because I think the biggest surprise for me was Jinx's arc during this season, and it's because after she guns down Silco and commits to the Jinx identity and launches the terrorist attack at Piltover, I was of the opinion that she has made her choice, and the season is going to be her committed to her new path. But the thing I did not realize, and I think it was ultimately the right decision for the show, was that was a choice made out of grief and uncertainty and loss, every bit as much as all the other choices that she had been going through beforehand. She does not want to be Jinx, the terrorist symbol of the underworld. And what part of what the trailer kind of tried to play on and focus on, which again, misleading trailers, although they played fair, was the character of Savika basically saying to Jinx, you're a symbol. We're being oppressed. The people need you. You can stand up and lead the revolution. And I thought that was the direction that she was going to go. That was not what she wanted. She did not want to be the savior. She did not want to be the symbol. In many ways, she takes up that mantle because Isha, is the one, sees that in her. Isha, who she saved by pure chance. She didn't even try to save her. Isha was being chased by these gangs and she fell, and Jinx just happened to be there, and then she saved her, by gunning down the people who were coming for her. But what did Isha see in that moment? Isha saw a hero, someone who could, someone to look up to. She had no baggage about who Powder or Jinx is before. She just sees someone who can protect her and who's worth following. And in many ways, she's the one who pushes Jinx to, when she gets herself captured, she goes to save her. But that starts her on the path of recognizing that she can be loved again, not only by Isha, but by Vander, who, as we will learn, is actually not dead and has been mutated into this terrible, form of Warwick, and by Vi as well. And that saves her in many ways, because she had, the revolution that I was so certain would be the spine of the season, it gets crushed. It gets crushed between episodes 3 and 4. There's the awesome, paint the town blue, riots all around you, that sequence that was in the trailer. But then it was revealed, actually, that all Zaun rose up and Ambessa and the Nazi and soldiers went down and they had brutally oppressed everyone. And now That's done. And Jinx is in hiding. But that made me realize that was not Jinx's story. Jinx needed to know that she was loved again, and ultimately it's one of the reasons why her connections with Vander and with Vi, when Vi reaches out to her and says, "What are you doing? He's your father too." And she breaks down into tears. She opens herself to that possibility, and then she loses it when Isha dies, and she thinks that's it. But then Echo shows it to her again, and that allows her to become the savior. The big kick-ass moment of the finale is when Ambessa has Piltover on its knees, and the sound starts playing. And who is it? It's Jinx and it's Echo with the rollicking come play sound. They come in and they utterly kick ass. But then it ultimately comes back to the more personal dynamic between Vi and Vander and Jinx, and she makes the selfless sacrifice to let herself go. And I was like, that was not the story I expected, but it was probably the right story for her.
I think a big part of, if, like in that scene where, Echo is over and over trying to stop her from making the decision, it takes her also looking at the machine and seeing her signature monkey design on it and realizing like there's another life, like in another life she helped him make that she helped him make this machine. So I think realizing that there's another version of herself that is possible too.
And
that it is still possible.
Yeah, and that I just, to that exact point, Mike Deathridge had also put in the chat, have we talked about how AU Powder definitely knew Echo wasn't her Echo, but still helped and loved him anyway. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's exactly right. That I think that on some level that version of Powder did recognize that this perhaps was not the Echo that she was in love with in that timeline, but it was still her Echo, and she still helped him and she still loved him in that moment when they have that connection where Echo is going back to his original timeline and they share that connection before he disappears, and then Powder gets her Echo back.
Right.
It's so beautiful.
And, I'm sorry, John. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that moment where she looks up, and sees him, and it's just this completely different Echo from the one she knows, but there is still that love, and there's, it's such a beautiful moment, and especially because we've gotten used to throughout that episode of seeing, even though we've been following, it is our Echo, but he's been in the appearance of this alternate Echo, and so when we see him again in his full glory standing there, it's really kind of an awe-inspiring, beautiful moment. And I did want to mention real quick about sort of Jinx's, coming sort of back into herself, as Echo obviously is the monumental sort of catalyst for that in the moments before Jinx is about to end her life. But I also want to sort of go back to before that, because there's this really beautiful, thing that happens in each of the arcs of this season, which is these moments between her and Silco. And this in the first act, it's when she's letting him go in the water after having killed him, and and so she's sort of hearing, I think she hears his voice in that scene, and then there's a second scene that is very much one-sided, where she's talking to his chair in the office, but then we actually get Silco, in, whether that's whatever your interpretation of that scene is, if that's just like, her, imagining Silco, or if, she's got the, the hex, gem or whatever, so maybe there's something else going on there, but it's just this really beautiful scene where, and it's also, it feels like in a lot of ways the culmination of Silco's arc as well, because he's sort of saying these things like, he is coming to an understanding of where he went wrong and the things that he should have valued, and passing that on to her. And I think that even though that doesn't really get her all the way where she needs to go, obviously, because she's still about to, because then, she sees ending the cycle as ending her life, and so she still really needs Echo to come and help her. But I did want to mention that scene between her and Silco, because I think it's really beautiful for both of those characters, and for and whether it's real or not, for sort of two characters who loved each other, but their final scene is the embodiment of a very toxic relationship, as beautiful as it is, whereas this scene kind of really feels like a healing moment between those two characters in a lot of ways. And I thought it was so beautiful. And like I said, these little moments that we get of Silco this season really just amplified my love for the character. And I think it's one of the master strokes of the show to take someone who does such really horrible things throughout the show, but shows us this three-dimensional image of who this person was. And so that when we get these glimpses throughout the season of, once in flashback, and then another time in that alternate timeline where he still was doing bad stuff, but he found his way back to the light, it's just really, it's everything that I love about the show, embodied into that character. And so I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned.
Yeah, I have to love Jinx in her new hairdo. At the end, just I felt like, well, just even symbolically, she has. I mean, those there's some very long, heavy braids, and that's all the years of shit she has been carrying with her for a long time, and now she's finally decided to be free herself of it, and gives herself a little streak of finds the time to give herself a streak of pink before heading into battle. So
there's a lot of Vi in Jinx's final outfit.
Mm-hmm.
There's like her top looks like a body wrap type thing, which is very Vi.
Mm-hmm.
Like Vi kind of has this almost bandagey looking torso wrap. And then Jinx has it as well, but with like the big colored X on the front. And she's got a very similar hairstyle to Vi at the end. And she's got the streak. And she's wearing red boots, which is what Vi is wearing for most of Act 2 and 3. So yeah, like she has taken on a lot of aspects of her sister to become a more well-rounded person.
And Isha too, the hood that she wears when she rides in to save the day is very much reminiscent of the hood that Isha wore.
Yeah, the balloon has Isha's goggles design on it and bunny ears.
Oh, it's so cute.
I do want to, because I want to make sure that we spread the love and we don't forget to talk about certain characters. I really do want to talk about Mel, because another character who's sort of in and out of the season, but man, when she comes back in that final act, she is a force to be reckoned with. And she wasn't necessarily one of my favorite characters in season 1, even though I really liked her character a lot, but I don't know if I considered her one of the highlights. But man, I just like, she was just amazing here. And,
yeah, I don't think I could have predicted Mel at all.
Yeah.
This season.
Yeah, no, I was so happy when Trish mentioned earlier that Mel was one of her favorite characters. I was kind of like, yes, because I have loved Mel throughout the season, this season and the previous season. After as I commented on the season 1 stream, after initially being quite suspicious of her, I was originally thinking that she would be more nefarious in the reasons that she was backing Jace for Hextech, but actually, in fact, we got to see that they formed a very real, genuine connection and romance that I found that I was invested in, but in particular, Mel's story this year also went in a completely different direction than I would have expected, because it got tied up. I did not expect that she would have magical powers.
Well, also, following up on the conversation that we had on the last stream, I didn't even know she'd be alive.
Well, yes. The carnage was a little bit, less widespread than we perhaps feared. All due respect to Councilors Hoskell and Bulbeck and Lady Kierman, I think we can kind of say that, yeah, they were the collateral damage.
Let's face it, Caitlin's mother was the only one we were kind of broken up over. But I love the idea that there's a story reason for that, and it's because Mel was secretly magic and subconsciously shielded Jace from harm, and Jace has the line that I picked up on my partial rewatch earlier, where he's like, I was standing right next to Victor. He's devastated and dying, and I'm completely unscratched. Well, there is a reason for that. It's because Mel subconsciously protected him. And seeing her in her final form was incredibly cool. I will say this is not a criticism at all, because I ultimately was just like, let it go, let the story wash over you. The one element of the story that I struggled with in the middle act was, what the fuck is the Black Rose? I was reading a lot of explainer articles. What the fuck is the Black Rose? I don't know what is this Nazian mage cult that seems to have the all powerful. And eventually I was just like, you know what? The story will give me enough answers in due time. And I think we got enough. Answers. But yes, it was a little bit of a bummer. But I think that's one of those things that we have the potential to learn more about.
Oh, I agree.
On the next series, and that would be cool. But I do agree that I think they gave us enough for the purposes of this story, and especially on rewatch, I was able to pick up on some stuff, little what's the word I was searching for? Little exposition drops, earlier in the season. I just want to say thank you, Mike, for your comment. I always love it when people sort of randomly happen upon our channel, because usually a lot of our viewers are just people we know and our friends. So I'm glad you found the stream, and I'm glad you're enjoying it. Thank you.
We got a little side community that we got, like Gwyn, Gwyn, Trish, and I have all been part of the same little online community for many, many years now, and we don't really advertise anymore. But hey, if you want a ready-made group of extremely nerd people to talk to about stuff, we've got a spot for you.
Yeah, the thing about this channel is normally, originally the basis for this came from the Here Be Dragons channel, which is still up, but there haven't been streams in a long time. I know
about a year since I streamed.
Yeah, and this is an offshoot of that. Over on Here Be Dragons, it was very consistently, we talked about sort of quote unquote nerdy things, and that was our brand. Then of course, when starting up this channel, hand me the keys, and it's going to get very sort of cinephile centric. So a lot of times we're talking about stuff that doesn't necessarily bring in a bigger audience. And I think, Jared, you and I made peace with that a while ago. We were like, you know what? If some weeks it's just us talking to ourselves, we're fine with that. Um, but it is nice when we talk about stuff that is more in the cultural zeitgeist, and we get some people coming in to chat with us, and yeah. But thank you for everybody who's come to chat with us this week.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Mike, if you can, I'll repost the link, but just join this Discord server and I'll get you hooked up with that other community. Because, yeah, it's a lovely group of people. It really is.
Yeah, we've a lot of us we've been sort of, we discovered each other back in late 2019, and our community has just grown since then. And things have settled down a bit post pandemic, but we all still, we're one big family, and so yeah, it's been one of the most rewarding parts of my life.
So, yeah, if you want in, here is the link to this is my D&D Discord server, but given my basically absence from most social media, this is the best way to find me. So just join this Discord server and I will send you a link to our Slack group community, which is where all of our socialization usually happens.
Mike, this is a bit of a digression. We're still very much like talking about the show. We're not necessarily wrapping things up just yet, but I do love to tell the story whenever we meet new people, which is how Stev and I found each other, which was that I was the quiet person who barely talked to anybody. I had been to the Game of Thrones convention, Con of Thrones, for the 3 years. I think it was the 3 years that it existed, pretty much. And in that last year, I made it a point to start reaching out to more people, which for me was me being very shy and walking through crowds of people. But what it did do was it got me on to the sort of fandom Twitter, sort of group of people that following certain people, and I found Stev on Twitter, and I had recognized him from a panel that we did. I don't know if he's hiding his face or what's going on, but we sort of, I don't even remember how it happened, but we started talking to each other on Twitter a little bit. Oh, I remember what it was. Yeah, because this is the story. I reached out to him just to say that I loved an outfit he posted himself in on.
What outfit would that be, John?
There we go.
What outfit would that be?
That one right there.
That's why I had to disappear for a hot second.
And because I had seen him at Con of Thrones on a panel in a Stark cosplay. And so I jokingly said, not jokingly, it was very serious. I said, I didn't have the chance to compliment you on your cosplay at Con of Thrones, so I am going to rectify that mistake and compliment you on your outfit that you are wearing now, sir, because it's amazing. And Steph responded to me, and it didn't take but like 2 words between us where he really sort of metaphorically and almost literally just grabbed me by the shirt and pulled me in, and he told me to like come hang out in the chat in his YouTube channel that would eventually become Here Be Dragons, and then we started talking so much that eventually you invited me on to talk about The Expanse.
Another great show, by the way, The Expanse.
Yeah, which became one of our favorite shows. And, well, it was already one of your favorite shows. It became one of mine. And then things just grew from there. And the community that, we sort of formed sprouted out of that. And, like, the fact that And it was like in that first initial conversation where this never materialized, unfortunately, but where you said we should do a panel together at
Well, it turned
Con of Thrones.
It turned from we should do a panel together to, hey, you know it's great practice for a panel, a live stream.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and that has been the sort of vibe of our community ever since. It's like we just, we love, recognizing that in other people who need just someone to basically pull them into your orbit and say, hey, we like all these, fun, DT things. And
Yeah,
we can see that you do too.
We have a large assortment of weirdos over there.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's my digression. But I always love to just, talk about how we first met because it's such an amazing story.
I love this story. I do too. That's why I had to go like, where is it? I had to go find it real quick and just throw it on real. Yeah, it's a big pink bloody bear costume. Don't ask.
So anyway, let's
Arcane.
Arcane.
Yeah.
I have to ask some things before Stev runs out of steam here.
All right, go.
Okay. So one of the things that we had talked about was, of course, the Jesus symbolism of, cyber Jesus here of, Victor. And, does it seem like, because this is the impression that I got, that the Arcane Victor was able to see ultimately able to see what the destruction would be like if he carried out what he was going to do, which is why he needs Jace to be his Judas. And that's why so it's actually Victor who is the hooded figure that hands the little boy Jace the arcane crystals when he was a child. And then they meet again later in life. He knew his mortal human self is going to meet Jace again, and they're going to have this partnership. But then he has to also show Jace, where the Arcane decides to plant Jace into the future. He has to show him that humanity is basically destroyed. It probably itself, so that Jace understands the stakes here, so that he can do the Judas thing when he has to. How do you guys feel about that?
No, I love it because I love timey-wimey shit.
It's timey-wimey.
So from my perspective, future Victor, or future Arcane Victor, that's where he's from, or at some point in the future. So he's seen all that. And so he's, sort of learned from, that the big plan that he had didn't really work out. And and so then he's sort of hopping around time. He saves Jace and sort of sets him on the path, so that he can one day, be in a position to stop, the younger version of himself. So, but yeah, then you get into exactly what version of events happened in the time that, that hooded, Victor,
Mecha Jesus.
Yeah, did things happen
exactly
the same, except it didn't work, or a lot is sort of left up to the imagination at that point too. But it would be interesting to, to find out more about it, but also we're given as much as we're needed for the story to be told. But yeah, it's a time traveling Victor.
Mhm.
You know.
I mean, I would imagine if you have godlike powers, then you also can maybe see different timelines of possibility.
Well, I think he did see them all because it shows him over and over dropping different runes into baby Jace's hands.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this specific rune that had this specific sort of like power set, because different runes do different things. That, and I don't know why it was this rune over any other, but yeah.
Mhm.
There was most of a thought in there. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
I think there was about 80% of a thought in what I said.
I mean, and then also when you think about, okay, well, if he sent Jace there to see that future, then he also sent Heimerdinger and Echo into their timelines to understand what's at stake for them.
Yeah.
And maybe seeing that Echo is going to need Heimerdinger to help him.
Well, and then that's where kind of like that's when you pick up on sort of context clues and theorize your own stuff, because we're not given like exactly, if that was actually a part of Victor's plan as well. It would seem like that would make sense because Echo plays such a vital role in.
I mean, I was just thinking too that he has to send Echo and Heimerdinger into a timeline where Jinx or Powder would be willing to help them.
Yeah. Yeah, and also not just that, but a reality where Hextech was never created, because we see specifically like the thing that makes that reality different and almost its inflection point, as it were, is the fact that the heist that we saw in the very first episode of the series went differently in this reality, and it resulted in, among other things, Vi's death, but it also resulted very clearly in Jace and Victor never creating Hextech, probably because with Vi's death, the Academy was like, no, you don't get to do any more research at all. And so who knows where Jace and Victor are in that reality. They may be, Jace is probably making hammers or he's, in prison somewhere. But regardless, it seems like, as Mike is pointing out, like it was that specific rune and that specific timeline that needed to be, that became a key inflection point. But also, in particular, one of the things I love about the episode 7 is, well, we've gushed and gushed and gushed, rightly so, about the Echo and Powder side of that story. That is not the only storyline in episode 7. The other storyline in episode 7 is Jace's long, dark torment of the hellish, multicolored apocalypse that is at the end of Victor's pursuit of perfection. Where he is basically like if we were talking about the idea that the Echo side of the story is like what is what could have been but can't be for me, this version of me at least. Jace's version of that story is what could still be but does not need to be, and that is ultimately what Victor is trying to show him, even though he does not realize it is Victor yet, because they do kind of a brilliant little inversion in the linear storytelling here, where they show us Jace come back from this trial, and he has clearly seen some shit, and then he's acting in ways that we would not expect Jace to act. He murders Salo, and then he's on a quest to go down to this commune where we see that Victor is doing good, healing addicts of Shimmer, gathering a community, and Jace is basically intent on murdering him. And you're like, what the fuck, man? I thought you two were brothers. But then but then that episode 6 ends with Victor's speech of humanity, our very essence is inescapable. Our emotions, rage, compassion, hate, two sides of the same coin, inextricably bound. That is what inspires us to our greatest good, is also the cause of our greatest evil. And we learn that this is what Victor is trying to show Jace, so that Jace can in time show Victor the error of his ways. Because Victor, after being killed, for all intents and purposes, kind of learns the wrong lesson from that. He basically learns the idea that now I understand humanity is corrupt, and the choice and free will always lead to this needless suffering. So let's just take all that away. And we ultimately needed him to go back to the idea that, as Jace tells him in that speech, there is beauty in our imperfections. And, again, I never shipped Jace and Victor really, but, platonically, they are kind of soulmates, I think, is one of somebody in the chat had pointed out earlier in the chat. And that speech that Jace gives him was basically like, Victor, you were always seeking to heal yourself, your leg, your illness, to your disease. These are things that made you you. And I loved you. And that is the key. That is the key that gets Victor to, recognize that, as he says, only you could have shown me this. So I think it's pretty
I do like a couple things. First, on the subject of the Jason Victor shipping, I will first of all say that I love that people do ship those characters, because I think that that's absolutely right there, if you want to read it that way.
Not much of a stretch, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, but I don't personally, because I'm also a really big fan of showing really emotional friendship and love between men that is not necessarily romantic, because I think that is what's the word I'm looking for? Underrepresented in media. Because men, it's the two extremes. They've either got to be really manly and, we don't show our emotions, or it has to be a romantic relationship, and there's a lot of in between. I like it when we get to see something like that. And so, but at the same time, I see very much where, why people would see that, why they would wish to see that. And so I'm like, yes, more power to, if that's your read on their relationship, then that's great. I think it's wonderful.
I agree.
Yeah. It's not, there's no right or wrong way. Shipping just means that you like the relationship, whether it's, you certainly could put a romantic undertone to it because they have a shared passion. And, that can be really cool.
Yeah, but is that shared passion gay sex?
I don't know if Victor himself has ever.
I think I broke Jared for a second.
Well, I just happen to know this Himmel Stucker's comment where he or she points out that Victor is asexual in the mind of the creators.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't know that. And see, actually, my read on it was always that I didn't think it was a romantic love for Jace, but I thought that there was a possibility that it was for Victor. But if he's asexual in the minds of the creator, that makes a lot of sense too. Because it's sort of reading him as a character.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, but as we point out, asexual does not necessarily mean he's not capable of love. He talked about the idea earlier after he's been gone through his initial stage of his transformation. He's like, our paths diverged a long time ago. It was affection that bound us together.
Yeah, and I just made a critical mistake. I want to apologize. I equated, the term asexual with meaning
aromantic,
not romantic, which is they are not even remotely the same thing. So, yeah, I was incorrect to say that. But that was my read on it. That there was. My read is that it is possible for me that Victor has romantic feelings for Jace, but that's the beauty of the relationship. I think that there's so many different ways that you can read it, and like you said, Trish, there is no wrong way.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not homophobic to like not ship them or something like that. It's
Right.
not,
No.
you know,
Yeah.
because like shipping can be completely about a bromance. It could be, you know, romantic. It could be getting dirty and nasty on AO3. I don't know. It could be a lot of things, but they're but I do love their relationship anyway. It's
Here's the
like,
thing. All
Yeah,
artists,
no, it's one of the like, and I think at the end of, I don't want to say that it's like the most important relationship of the entire thing, because you also have, I think that obviously Vi and Jinx, they have such a crucial relationship for the whole story, and Vi and Caitlin as well. But in terms of sort of what the climax of the story revolves around, like Victor and Jace are just so key to the entire story, and no matter what that relationship is to each individual viewer, I just think it's so incredibly beautiful, and it's there, like it's such a beautiful relationship throughout the entire show, even as they have their ups and downs. And yeah, I love the two of them.
yeah.
can we talk about? Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that, it's been said a million times. All art is subjective. We're
Mhm.
all going to be viewing this through our own particular lens. And if the creators say they envision Victor as asexual, okay, there's some merit to that. I should take that into account when thinking about the relationships. But they don't go out of their way to portray Victor as being ace.
Yeah.
And so I think it's completely valid for people to watch this show and say, that's a gay couple.
Yeah.
And I also think it's completely valid for people to go through this show and say that those are two men who love and respect each other without like a sexual component to it.
Even though, like, I do appreciate the joke of they're really good friends.
Right. I made that joke about
But-
Yeah.
Kate and Vi in the jail cell. Look at how good of friends they are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's my bad.
There's different, as you said, it's subjective. I personally will own up to the fact that I always saw the relationship between Jace and Victor as a brotherly relationship bound by, a shared interest and ambition, and also because I enjoyed the symmetry of the central protagonist being on one side, this couple, these two sisters, Vi and Powder/Jinx, and on the other side, sisters by blood. And then on the other side, Victor and Jace, brothers by circumstance and shared interest. So that was always my read on it. But I do acknowledge that like the iconography and things of like them, their cosmic connection at the end, and when I went on social media afterwards and someone pointed out like now Jace and Victor get to be cosmic husbands forever. I'm like, that's not an invalid interpretation. And if that is the interpretation you prefer, as Trish would say, that is what AO3 is.
That is what
Right.
it is for. Can we let me just ask about Sky for a second, because she's really not someone that got very much screen time, but like at the end and she gets basically vaporized. But she shows up again as a figure that Victor converses with in this kind of like in this cosmic realm. Now I don't know if that's really her, or if that's a projection of his mind. But I mean, it's kind of, obviously the real Sky had a bit of a crush on Victor, and we can understand why. He's just so fragile and beautiful. But I mean, like one of the most heartbreaking things about that whole interaction with them is that when he says I'll miss our conversations, and she says no, you won't.
Yeah.
You know, like once I'm gone, you'll forget I ever existed.
Well,
And
I think that's all. But for me, I read that more because of what he was about to turn into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like he would not be able to miss them anymore.
Yeah, he would not be able to. Oh yeah, okay, he would not be able to miss them. Excuse me. That would be the last of his humanity.
Yeah, I think
an ability to relate to another human being. But it was kind of like strange to me to use Sky for that, or like because we didn't really. She was barely there in the show. Like we really didn't get to know her that well.
I think that the reason they chose to have Sky as the visualization for that was because at the end of season 1, you know, Victor is desperate to save himself and is pushing the hex technology further and further, and then Sky, who, as you said rightly, is like clearly head over heels in love with him, is like coming in, and she sees him and she tries to save him, and she perishes for it. And he feels tremendous, overwhelming, unequivocal guilt over the fact that she died for him. And it's basically what pushes him to tell Jace, forget what happened, we need to destroy Hex Core, we've lost our way. And then when he is, you know, mortally injured and Jace breaks his promise and uses the Hex Core to save Victor, and Victor is like despondent over that because he's still torn up about Sky and the fact that he thinks that this was the wrong path. And he parts ways with Jace. But then he starts to see, in many ways, you know, the good he can do with his new powers. You would mention the whole, like, Jesus, you know, technological Jesus archetype, Trish. And, you know, it's very, very much there in the early episodes where he's surrounded by the ailing and the sick who are around Shimmer, and he's healing. And I think that is in many ways what allows Sky to kind of come back to the surface of his mind, and whether or not it's really her because she's preserved within the Hex Core, or if it's just his mental protection of her. I think it's him basically recognizing that maybe I was given these gifts for a reason. But then when he ultimately makes the decision to effectively surrender his humanity and become his moniker in League of Legends, the Machine Herald, that is when he lets her go. And I think that is the moment where we start to see that what the idea of, like, sometimes you have to take a leap forward. Sometimes taking a leap forward means leaving a few things behind. In this moment, what Victor is willing to leave behind to achieve progress is his humanity, as embodied by Sky, and both his personal affection for and his guilt over her death.
Yeah, that's something I've been wanting to say since you asked this question. You know, you can ask the question, is that Sky? What is she? Is she absorbed into the Arcane? Is she a figment? Is she a part of Victor's mind? Is she something that the Arcane is using to manipulate Victor? Like, and I don't think there's a clear answer to that. But I don't think I don't think that's the more important question. I think the more important question is, what is that character's narrative purpose at that point? Like, why is she there anyway? Despite the fact that we don't see much of her in season 1, what is she there to do? And she is there to represent Jace's connection to humanity.
Yeah, and I think for me, I don't think that she's there because she's a figment of his imagination. I think that her life essence is absorbed into the Arcane. Now, I do have a question of whether there's any aspect of her at all, or if it's just a sort of representation of that person that the Arcane, creates, for Victor, and and it is a part of him sort of dealing with the guilt of the fact that she died, and he feels responsible for that. But there's an ambiguity there that I kind of like. It's kind of creepy.
I mean, I see her as also someone who, she practically, aside romantic feelings aside, she clearly admired Victor as a hero. It was hero
Yeah.
worship. She's a young scientist and herself, and she is so thrilled to be working under him. And you could see how nervous she is to even share her ideas with him. Um, but I wonder if for whatever reason she is appearing, is that um, she represents maybe because of his guilt and because of his, I guess, wavering certainty over what they should do with hex tech. She's there to reassure him that no, he's a good person. You're a good person. You're doing this for all the right reasons, Victor. You're because she still kind of encourages him to keep going.
Yeah, and part of that is the fact that she was a child of Zaun as he was, and they knew each other as children. And Victor's entire purpose in wanting to create Hextech was to give it to the people, of Zaun.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what he ends up doing in a different way when he is trying to heal the communities who are ravaged by Shimmer. And so in that respect, I think having Sky as like the avatar encouraging him also makes sense.
Guys, I got to warn you, I'm running out.
Okay.
Okay.
I've only got so much in me. Can I say, though, like, this was a lot of fun. Having not streamed, I've been a guest here and there on other people's streams, but, like, having not really done it for a good solid year now, and then just getting back on with you, Gwyn, it was just like I kind of fell into my old role of like, hey, well, here's this question, let me butt in and blah 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 blah. Like, it's so different to be streaming with you than really almost anybody else. Because I recorded with Trish on her podcast earlier this year. I was on Sandry Scribbles. I think I did something else a few months ago, but like, it felt like coming home, buddy.
Thank you. That means so much to me. And I was really excited when you said you were going to come on, because I was like, oh, he's probably going to be busy. And, but I still wanted to put the invite out there. And then when you said that it would be a lot of fun, I was like, yes.
And you know what? I was right. It was a lot of fun. Also, to the couple of people who joined my Discord server, I will probably not tonight, but tomorrow, be sending you invitations to our Slack group through that Discord connection, because that's where the real fun happens, y'all. But Gwyn, Jared, thanks for having me as a guest. Trish, I see you all the freaking time. But it's always fun, like, talking with you. There's a reason why I was like, yes, Trish as well. Let's go.
Let's go.
But yeah, I've got a standing engagement at 8 p.m. my time, which is in about 13 minutes every Sunday night. So gotta go.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming, and it was such a delight having you, and it just made me very nostalgic. So
yeah.
So thank you very much.
Well, again, thanks for having me, Jared. A pleasure as always. Gwyn,
welcome back.
I love you, and I'll see you guys later.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
All right. It's for those of you that in chat who we talked about it a bit. The fact that I used to do Here Be Dragons, which was a stream that Stev and I did along with our sister Nessie, our sister in arms, and it's. So it's just great whenever I can get one of them to come on and guess, which, speaking of which, I got to entice Nessie into coming on. The one that she always brings up is talking about, oh, brother, where art thou? So I'm going to have to pull her in with that one at some point. One thing that we haven't we mentioned it in passing, but I did want to devote some time to it, is Warwick and the return of Vander, which I found so incredibly heartbreaking. And like it felt so unfair to like on so many levels, not just his ultimate fate, but the fact that this happened to him at all. The fact that, you know, it was bad enough the way he, you know, we believed he ended, you know, in the first act of season 1, you know, but it's not a fate that Vander deserved to be
No.
kept alive in this fashion for years and years and years.
I mean, and to have your identity and memories almost all but erased.
Yeah,
it's worse than death.
Well, it felt like, as a viewer, it felt like, and not in terms of like, you know, I thought it worked brilliantly from a story perspective, but in a lot of ways it felt like such a violation, you know, to the memory of Vander.
Yeah.
And then as soon as like they were taking him to get healed, I was like, no, there's no way this ends well. And I was like, God damn it, they're really gonna do this, aren't they? And yeah, and this is the one part of the season where I wished that this had been a week by week show instead of dropping in batches, because I wish I could have held on to the ending of episode 5 for a week before being plunged into the heartache of what happens in the next episode, just to get the ending of what are you waiting for? He's your dad too. And just the family hug. And if I could have just sat with having Vander back for a week, you know, that would have really, instead of immediately going into losing him again.
I mean, that whole montage they made of like in watercolor of Vander's memories of, you know, the kids growing up, and it like, I mean, it was so bittersweet, like him being able to get that back, and that was like recovered memories, you know, but realizing that this is not going to end well either.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it is bittersweet in that he did get to see Vi and Powder again.
Well, and it is, and in essence, it is what saves Jinx, you know, in a lot of ways, because as much as, you know, obviously Isha is monumental in showing, you know, Jinx that, you know, she can be loved and have love, but there really is no substitute for getting back a parent that you lost.
I mean, it is what brings Jinx and really Vi back together, and like they can actually put aside the past and try to find a way to help him, you know, because like at least they have like this unified desire to like see if they can help him, you know.
No, in many ways, getting Vander back even briefly, even in this forever changed form, was a way to heal the wound that tore the sisters apart in the first place. Because in season 1, you know, they were on the mission to try and save Vander when it all went wrong. And there are, you know, there were still consequences for that. Obviously, Milo and Clagger, you know, are gone for good. But Vander coming back in this form originally, like this was the one thing that I had been spoiled for me in certain respects, because I was very moved when I saw Vander's death at the end of Arc 3, and then I happened to be on some online thing and people were like, you know, Vander is Warwick, right? And I'm like, who's Warwick? Then I looked it up, and then I saw Warwick in the trailer. I'm like, oh, okay, he's coming back. But that didn't make the emotional power of it any less. And part of it is it's tied in again to the idea of Vi and Powder getting their dad back, but then recognizing that he too has been changed. And the tragedy is that he has been changed against his will. If there is one character we've not really mentioned who is pretty unequivocally villainous throughout this whole thing, it's Singed. Because he is the character who is willing to sacrifice all humanity for progress multiple times. And when people point out in the chat that we lose Vander multiple times, it's always freaking Singed, because he's the one who creates the shimmer that Vander has to inject himself with. And then Vander dies saving his girls, and then Singed finds him, is like, oh, no, I'm going to turn you into this monster. And then he, gets his humanity back by reconnecting with his girls. And then Singed is like, and we're just going to take that from you now. So it's kind of, it's a brutal lesson. And it's a tragedy that in the end, Vander really is gone for good.
Yeah. And Singed was the real winner of this series.
I still say that Vi and Caitlyn get a happy ending. They have to go through a lot of heartbreak and issues to get there. But I do think ultimately they have a happy ending. But the fact that Singed gets exactly what he wants,
scot-free,
is bullshit.
Yeah.
And like so reflective of how the world works.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a character that like is very interesting. I think it's a great character, but also I hate his guts because he just ruins things for good people, so many times. But again, it's like it's a question of what wouldn't a father do for for their daughter. So like even he has like there's a reason for everything that he does, but it doesn't make him any less despicable. Jesus. I imagine that's not the last we'll be seeing of him, because it seems like I don't know the characters from the games and whatnot, but it does seem like there's a story teed up about the daughter and all that stuff. So that'll be interesting. I mean, really, like I'm not going to be coy about this. Like there are so many of these characters that I really hope pop up in the future shows, because I'm not done with with these characters, and I don't want this to be the last I've seen of a lot of them. So I want to switch gears for a second, because there's a story point and a character that I should have brought up earlier, because from much earlier in the season, but I just want to go on about how like design wise and character wise and like performance wise, I think it was so cool and sort of out there. And that is oh wait, hold on, make sure that I get the name, because I've just completely okay, yes, from episode 2, when we get the gang war, the character of Smeech. when he was introduced in season 1, I was like, oh my god, that is a wild character design. And then he's all over the trailers for this season, because of course the trailers really were focused on the first act of the season. So I did think it was funny when he only lasted through the second episode. But I just thought, like, this is a great character design, and I thought he was really fun, and, just the kind of stuff they had him do. I love the fight between him and Savika. And when Savika has the amped up, she's been jinxified.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the shot doesn't have her wild arm that Jinx gives her, but I love every time she has to pull the thing, and it's like a slot machine, and she just rolls her eyes at Jinx.
Yeah.
And I thought that whole aspect of the second episode was just so much fun. Just everything. It might seem an odd choice for a character to point out, but I just thought Smeech was so much fun.
Yeah, he was very, he's very easy to root against, because he very much is the slime ball who is only in it for himself and willing to sacrifice anyone. But that just made him a good father for to get the business end of Savika's new arm, and that fight scene is delightful. Set to rollicking song Renegade, I believe it's called. And yes, the fact that it builds to more and more and over the top, and it ends finally when Savika pulls the lever and it comes out like the three aligned smiles, like a
and then it's all screen. We just see her reaction.
Yeah, and I love the fact that one of my favorite little comedic beats in the entire season is Isha looks horrified, and then she looks over at Jinx, and Jinx is like, yeah. And then Isha smiles because he's like, oh, I guess we're supposed to be happy about the fact that this rat just got pulverized. Okay.
I love, and there's a bit earlier in the episode where I forget exactly the phrase, but but Smeech calls Savika, basically some kind of a rat or something. I'm like, really? Like, you're saying that?
Rejection.
But this will, if I have one minor complaint about the season, it's that I feel like Savika kind of dropped off a bit as the season went on. She's still in it, she's doing things, but we don't get character moments with her later on in the season. And that's one of those. I know, Jared, you've talked about there are things you would have loved to see sort of expanded upon, and I think Savika is one of those things. Just because it's a great character, she's a great character,
she ends up at the council table.
Yeah, no,
representing.
And that's great. Like,
it is cool. It is
as far as where the character ends up, that's great. I just wish we had gotten some more time with her. Because she gets a lot of good stuff earlier in the season, but it just, at a certain point, you just run out of time, and you really do have to kind of focus on those core relationships. And so I get that. And if she pops up in future shows, then that'll be better. I may reevaluate how I feel about it, but yeah, just a minor disappointment. Just because I would have liked to see more of her, but it's a very, it's a small complaint because I'm just so overjoyed with 99.9% of how everything came together.
Yeah, and I think that I wanted to see more from Savika, and I do think that they kind of dropped, the middle part of her arc. Like, I do think that she was an important part of this season because she was the connection to what was, in many ways, the good in Silco, such as there was, which was the idea that he wanted the Undercity to actually be free and independent. Now, he had his own designs for that. But Savika was always very much on that page, and we saw her more as like a antagonist primarily for Vi in season 1. But we see that, no, she believed in this. This is why she followed Silco. And her encouraging Jinx early in the season to become the revolutionary was not like a selfish decision. She's like, we need a hero, and you can be that hero. And even though I had personally issues with you, I'm willing to put those aside for a greater good. And so I do enjoy that she managed to be the representative for Zaun on the council at the end, even though it kind of fell off.
She's a nice counterbalance to Jinx's
I think part of the issue is that once you start to reunite Jinx and Vi, that kind of, you know, because Savita is the person for Jinx to bounce off of basically earlier in the season. But once you put Jinx and Vi together, like that's the relationship that, uh, for Jinx that you're kind of focused on. And so if they had maybe found a way to tie her into, other, sort of main characters. Like I said, we actually do see her quite often, in the latter episodes. It's just the problem is that we don't get like a good character scene with her. And, but yeah, no, I like the idea of, Mike brought up, they should release a director's cut. I'm never going to say no to extended editions of my favorite stuff. But yeah. But like I said, this season succeeds at so much that, it's, it's sort of like whenever I have like really small quibbles with something like Lord of the Rings, it's like, I'm not going to complain about them because too much because, the whole is so magnificent.
I mean, since we're already kind of there, and we've talked about Savika on the council, and we kind of see Piltover kind of heading into a new future at the end. I am like, I mean, this is kind of sort of okay for the most part a happy ending because that is progress too, where Zaun has actual representation in government.
Yeah.
I think it's not even just Savika. I think there's another person there. Like I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think there is another representative of Zaun on the council, which is great. I like, and it just makes me kind of wonder about the future of Piltover, like how moving forward, both sides have to be willing to let stuff go. Like, Piltover has to be willing to let go of, constantly seeking, trying to, not just oppress the Undercity, but letting go of some of the terrorist acts that went on in response to those things.
Well, and that's always the problem about, achieving peace is that you have to be willing to let go of the past, which is very hard.
Yeah, and Zaun has to be willing to let go of the horrific oppression that went on, like especially in this season, like led by Caitlin and Ambessa, to smoke out one or a few single terrorists. They are willing to, gas neighborhoods. That stuff has to be, all those things have to be forgiven. And that can sometimes in reality be a very big ask.
Yeah, and I think, and we get a hint of how big of an ask that is, because when Savita sits down at her council seat, there's some looks in her direction like this isn't all happy, like, oh, there's representation on the council now, everything's going to be hunky-dory. There's a lot of antagonism.
Yeah, and that's going to have to be worked through to make it. But there was a version of reality where Zaun was allowed to develop economically, environmentally, and be a much healthier, more thriving place. So it's possible, but I don't know if there's, like you said, there's still those like little hints that this is still, it's not happily ever after. It's going to take a lot of work because of the events of recent past. But it was great to see, though. It was great to see.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to get a little real here for a second without going too far down that road. But like, I don't think we would have bought a happily ever after.
No. No.
Especially not right now. It's like the best that can be hoped for is taking those first couple steps and just doing the hard work of sort of grinding peace out bit by bit.
An existential threat was defeated, and Mbessa was removed from power. And it does seem like Caitlyn has maybe stepped back away from that kind of militaristic leadership, and it has gone back to a rule by a council, a representative council.
Yeah, because she was never on the council. So, it's... Yeah, which is, again, going back to what you said about her and Vi having a fresh start. So actually her stepping back from any kind of leadership role is actually probably the best thing in the world for her. Given what transpired, which I'm very happy she learned from her errors, but she did make errors and some bad decisions. And so, so even though we don't quite know if she's like stepping back completely from, leadership, it does feel like that's a possibility. And so, like I said, that's probably a good thing if that is the case. Yeah, and there's the little finger line. You only make peace with your enemies. That's why it's called making peace.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a difficult, ending, and like I said, they can only try to just, take it one step at a time and moving forward, because that's the reality. There is, I don't think they could possibly have pulled off any kind of, happily ever after for the, in that way that would have been believable given what's established. And it'll be interesting to see if we get hints, in the next show about what's going on in Piltover, if they are moving to a completely new place.
It does seem like whatever is being established or has been established with the Black Rose, I think that's most likely where we're headed next.
Yeah,
because we do have one main character who still has a connection to the Black Rose that also killed her brother.
Yeah, no, I think that if there is going to be a more direct spin-off of this show as opposed to another show set in this world that's like almost completely its own characters, it probably will have a connection to Noxus, not only because that's where Mel departs at the end of the season, having now unlocked her powers, but also, again, one of those things I picked up just from exploring the articles, there are hints about apparently another powerful Noxian villain, Swain, the Noxian general. Apparently the Ravens that we've been seeing throughout the season, the three, like the red-eyed Ravens who've been spying on everything, apparently they are his agents. That is something that I had not actually picked up, but I learned just like reading about the show after the fact. And that would make sense because it does feel like the Noxus angle is the angle of the show that has the most potential left to be unexplored. Not being too familiar with the game, but knowing that there are many characters in the game who are based in Noxus, it seems like that would be a good place to take the show next and have Mel kind of be our protagonist for that, and then build the world from there and get more answers on the Black Rose. But, on that front, I do feel that like there's more to be done. But I'll let you talk, Gwyn, but I do say before we wrap up, I do want to at least talk a little bit about Mbessa and the role that she played in this season, because she was, for all intents, our primary antagonist. And
I meant to talk some about her when we brought up Mel earlier, but as is so often the case, we get sidetracked. Ambessa is like such an amazing character. Like I hate her guts, but like even with her, there's three-dimensionality and like and there are reasons why she's doing the things that she's doing, even though we don't necessarily agree with those reasons, and so much to the point that I still felt something as as Mel was holding her as she was dying, because they've established that relationship so well, even though it's a very most of the time difficult relationship and antagonistic, but there is love there, and although it was very satisfactory just watching how Mel sort of really takes it to a boss level.
Your mom definitely thought she didn't have it in her.
Yeah. But Ambessa just so great. Like I thought she was great just coming in at the end of season 1, because there was this this character that has such an immense presence, not just physically, because she's very big and strong, but just as soon as she stepped onto the scene, you were like, oh, like this is going to be our you could feel it had like big next antagonist vibes, and earlier in the season when like I had it in like the back of my head when they mentioned like somebody must have aided them when the attack happens. Like I'm pretty sure I had an alarm bell going off in my head, thinking, okay, I bet you it was Ambessa, but yet it was still so impactful when you get to the end of episode 3 and they do those flashbacks showing that it was her. She's such a fearsome character, and it's so easy for those characters to just be cartoonish, no pun intended, and just be very sort of two-dimensionally evil, but there is so much depth to her character, and so I just thought she was great, a fantastic antagonist for the show. And I actually thought that there was a possibility that she was being set up to continue on if we are going to Noctis next. I thought well, it feels like she'll be a big player moving forward, but then we got to the end of the season and it's like, oh, I guess not, which I actually liked, because if I had one sort of reservation throughout this season, it was concern that Ambessa's story and the sort of whole Noctis storyline was being teed up for the next show, and I was worried that it was going to take away from this show having a climax of its own, but that ended up not being the case at all. They paid off things wonderfully, and I loved the way that they ramped up and resolved Ambessa's story and her character arc, and her dynamic with Mel and with Caitlin and everything. And like I said, that moment with the chorus when she's walking up those steps is like, oh my god, what a badass. And so didn't love her necessarily, as like, in the true sense of the word, but loved what the character did for the show. And I thought like just how the character was designed, conceived, acted, like fantastic.
Yeah. Shout out to Ellen Thomas, who provided the voice for her. I thought that her vocal performance was actually one of the best of the entire show. And Ambessa is one of the things I appreciate most about the character is the fact that, she is a character who we see so very rarely on television, animated or live action. She is a, bold, fearsome, large, unapologetic, Black woman who that's not an identity the show focused on, but like that is very much in her character. And she was a force of absolute nature. She had every character in the show like at her heels almost. And, if it weren't for them all uniting, she would have, brought them down. And the fact that she is a villain in the show, like, that's also something not to be taken for granted. A lot of times with characters who are depicted by racial minorities, we think that we need to see them as purely heroic, or it's considered, not an appropriate representation. But in this case, Ambessa is very much a villainous character, but she's also complex and she has her own motivations, and she's, very, capable, and like she is the one pulling the strings for most of the season. And I think that is an incredibly valuable thing that the show did. And to see her in her full glory, even though it's terrible in many ways in the final episode, like there was a shot in the trailer that made me realize how intense the show was going to be, of Ambessa wearing her warrior mask, wielding her flails and cutting down soldiers. And you're just like, she's terrifying. She's a force of nature to be reckoned with. And that made her a worthy antagonist for an complex and sprawling show like this, And I think that is one of the reasons that, even though she ultimately meets her end in this show, she left a very important legacy for all the characters and for just the world of animation and storytelling in general.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's an end shot of like Mel, holding her mask, and it's not, she doesn't put on her mother's mask, but she holds it. But she also, I think her makeup is different. Like she looks a little bit more like she's wearing her mother's colors. But I think she's kind of like, season 1, she's not depicted as any type of warrior. In fact, like that's kind of why she doesn't kind of fit in so well. She's thoroughly a politician and a very, adept politician. But like her powers seem to be far more protective rather than aggressive. So like even when that doesn't even mean she's like any slouch here. She can definitely use her powers for some badassery, like as she saved Caitlyn's life, and I think we all cheered when that like Maddie took that bullet. But
oh god, it's so satisfying.
It is very satisfying. Man, that happens in such rapid succession. You find out what a shit Maddie actually is, and then boom.
I know, and she gets her like evil one-liner and immediately pays for it.
Immediate comeuppance.
I'm like, yep. What did you think was going to happen? Not that, but it did.
And there's Mel. So yeah, I think that she's probably carrying with her maybe her mother's best qualities, but still developed into, I guess fully coming into these powers.
Yeah. I do want to mention, like, even though I said earlier that Mel was not necessarily immediately like a favorite character from season 1, even though I liked her character quite a lot. And this season, like, she just jumped up as like one of the best characters of the show. But one thing that I loved unreservedly throughout this entire show about her was just her costume design, makeup, all that gorgeous stuff. Jesus.
She is gorgeous. Amazing.
Yeah.
I think somebody in the chat had pointed out she's one of the most beautiful animated characters they've ever seen, and I would agree.
Yeah. God, just amazing. And that's like, yeah, I'm really, it would be nice if she does continue on in a big role into the next show, which it feels there is the possibility for. And if, and so, and if she's like, if that's what the ship at the end is, if she's going, off to say Noxus, it seems like also strongly possible that there's a stowaway on that ship.
Well, there's also the
in
final
the
shot is a
in the-
ship, an airship going over the horizon.
Yep.
So, I guess we should talk about that now.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. So there's a possibility if wherever we end up next season that Jinx is popping up in that story.
I will say, if anyone could have survived that, it is Jinx.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no doubt about it now. It's just on that initial viewing, I was like, no, she's dead. Of course she's dead. What are you talking about? And then I heard other people talking about it. And then when I watched it the second time, I was like, oh damn, no, it's like really telegraphed.
Yeah.
She survived actually.
Yeah.
I mean, love that for her. Bittersweet. There's no she gets a fresh start, and
yeah,
she did. Like there's a saying, like if you already deserve a redemption arc, you don't need one, and she has definitely at least earned the right to have a fresh start somewhere else. But sadly, though, like if like you have to give something up to move forward, there's no place where Jinx can live in Piltover.
Mm-hmm.
Jinx is still a wanted criminal. That's not going away.
Yeah.
It like this is going on an airship and just going somewhere else and starting over completely is really the only way she can be free. So, and that means never really allowing her sister to be, or allowing the whole world to presume her dead, including her sister.
Yeah.
But again, that Caitlyn and Vi can start over because Jinx is no longer in the picture.
Yeah, and in many respects, I was just going to say that having one of the, I didn't get to rewatch all of season 2. I did rewatch all of season 1 to refresh my memory, and then kind of got midway through. And I remember a moment right from the very first episode where they're on the heist, the fateful heist, and Milo and Clagger and Jinx and Powder and Vine Powder are looking up at the airships, and Milo is kind of bragocious and saying, "One of these days, I'm going to shoot one of those ships down." And Powder says, almost more wistfully, "One of those days, I'm going to fly one of those airships." And then she does at the end, and I kind of think the headcanon is meant to be she is on that ship at the end.
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly.
Saying the same thing. I'm good with the director's cut. Please don't put my daughters in danger again. Yeah, I'm like I want these characters to continue. So in that sense, like I really do hope that we see Vi, Caitlyn, and Jinx again. But at the same time, I'm kind of cool just for a little while sitting with their ending. And if the creators want to sort of take their time weaving them back into the story at some point, I'm fine with that. Give me an opportunity to read some of that fan fiction on the internet. Those are the true director's cuts.
For sure.
But I would like to see them again someday. And yeah, I'm fine if that takes a little while, but because I really do love, like I said, I got my happy ending with Vi and Caitlyn, and I'm not in a rush to see that disturbed.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, let's just rewind a little bit to the moments preceding that. Like all this time, like Jinx has been near suicidal. Like she has been almost, wanting Vi to end her. Just you could just tell she is so tormented, and she's just so tired. She kind of just wants somebody to end it or to be over. And there at the end, it's not. It's the self-sacrifice is not self-destruction. It's I'm saving my sister, and I think that is like her personal victory, because she has lived with so much guilt of her impulsive actions getting people hurt or killed. And it's like one time where her action is self-sacrifice, and she looks so at peace with that decision to do that I can save my sister. And it oh god, what's the line she says at the end, like always your sister or something, or always.
Oh yeah, I'll pull it up.
I'm always with you even when we're worlds apart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
Exactly, something to that effect, and she just yeah. I mean, amazing personal victory for Powder over her demons.
Mike, the only issue I have with this is I feel like if Caitlyn knows that there's a chance that Jinx is alive, I would want her to tell Vi, so at least Vi knows that her sister's alive. So but you do say Jinx is gone, so that doesn't necessarily mean dead. So so yeah, if Caitlyn has her strong suspicions, which it seems like she does, I do hope she shares that with Vi. But yeah, and by the way, I have one other little quibble with the season, and like I said, I feel so guilty about mentioning quibbles because they're very small, but and I understand why they did it, but I wish we had gotten some music over the end credits for the final episode. They did the silence over the credits thing, and I'm like, no, it's the end of the series. I want like an emotional musical beat for coming out of the episode, but knowing that this world is continuing in another series, so it's the end, but it's also not the end. So I think ultimately I'm okay with it, but I'm always in favor of closing out something with some really good original score over the end credits, or it could have been a needle drop of some kind. I don't know. But that's just
or more Imagine Dragons, I guess.
Which funny enough, they did include the title version on the season 2 soundtrack, which I know you were very keen for, Gwyn.
I know, but they also extended it. It's like, no, just give us the original version.
Oh, you're never going to be satisfied with this stuff.
I know.
Take what you can get.
Now, it's so funny, my journey with that song, because Jared, you and I sort of had the same thing. We talked about this last time where, the first time I watched the show, it was kind of a weird choice for opening credits. I'm not really feeling this, not my kind of music. And then after a couple episodes, you're like, no, this is awesome. And it's repetition. It always doesn't. But no, I love the opening credits of both of these seasons, and we got something a little different this season, more introspective on the characters. I love that shot of Caitlyn with, her hands over her head, and it looks like a thorny crown and the shadow on the wall. I thought all that stuff was brilliant. So yeah. So I don't know, what haven't we talked about? Is there anything?
I don't know.
No, I mean we've covered, I think, all the major characters, most of the major story points. Obviously, with a show this rich, there are going to be things that we don't get to touch on. So I mean, like, obviously there are all the little minor characters. Shout out to Loris, Vi's drinking buddy, and the Infor. He was a real one. Shout out to Lest, the kind of like spy who was manipulating Sallow on behalf of Ambessa and was actually on Mel's payroll.
Oh,
She was a real
I really want to shout. I want to shout her out. Lest was played by the actress Eve Lindley, who I just recently saw in the film National Anthem with another actor who I absolutely love, Mason Alexander Park, who was in that as well. I got to go see it in theaters. It's a beautiful love story. I do highly recommend that. But when somebody pointed out that that's who voiced List, a small role in this, but I was like, oh, cool, yeah, and it was a love recognizing, actors who have been just in a couple smaller things, and yeah, I thought she did a great job, and yeah, if you haven't seen that movie, check it out because it's really one of those beautiful films of the year. And yeah, and you mentioned who was Vi's drinking buddy?
Loris.
Yeah, he was so great throughout the season because also early on in the season, like, he implants this sort of idea of almost, he's like a shadow of Vander, sort of hinting at Vander coming back into the story because he's got that same kind of hulking presence, and I was really bummed when he died. It's but he was a real one. So yeah, I loved him, and I do want to, I really do want to shout out Katie Townsend, who played Maddie. We're getting on her case quite a bit, deservedly so. But I thought, like, great job with the character because, especially in that first arc, like, we immediately gravitate towards her because she does seem so, like, plucky and and fun, and then it's like, it's very quickly, like I said earlier, it turns on a dime where we're like, oh no, girl, no. And then she turns out to be, and then once we feel sorry for her a little bit because, like, of course she is immediately going to get the cold shoulder when Vi comes back.
You know what? This is such, talking about shipping, this is such a trope where, like, you may feel like, oh shit, I mean, like, I like Vi and Caitlyn, but Maddie doesn't deserve this. She's being cheated on right now. And then, the easiest way to make the audience not feel bad for Maddie is just to make her into a total shitbag. Not that Caitlyn knew that at the time.
Yeah.
At the time of the jail cell scene, but it's just the audience doesn't have to feel bad for Maddie anymore.
Like, yes, and watching, I was like, I know this is a trope, but it's effective.
It was effective. It was effective. Yeah.
Although it is like sort of, but before we knew that she was a that she was turning bad, and there is some ambiguity about like at what point is
Yeah, at what point did Ambessa get her hooks into Maddie?
Yeah. But it is kind of like darkly humorous when, after Caitlin and Vi are back together, and Maddie's trying to like show affection, and she just totally gets the cold shoulder. And it's like, girl, you got to read the room. So, but then again, like you said, then we don't have to feel bad for her because she turns out to be a shitty person.
Exactly, and a traitor. So.
Yeah.
Otherwise we might really still feel differently about it. It still would suck for Maddie, if she wasn't. I mean, if she was actually genuine, like.
Yeah. See, this is a read on it. I'm honestly not sure where I land on it because it does like I feel like it can be either way. It can be a spurned lover turn near the end, or it can be that she was manipulating her the whole time.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe it wasn't necessarily fully. Well, yeah. I mean, I thought she was really just there, planted by Ambessa, just to make sure that Caitlin was still going to fall in line. That because if Vi ever reemerged, it was not going to be a problem for her plans.
Yeah, and that probably was it, but I'm just saying they don't definitively say one way or the other, so there is some room for interpretation there. But
I mean, like for a while there, it does seem like Maddie is also kind of has a little bit of hero worship too. Caitlin, that she looks up to her. Of course, it's bullshit now. We know it's bullshit now.
I just cracked up because obviously I didn't see a lot of this stuff because I'm not on formerly Twitter anymore. But I did really crack up when I was watching Sanri's Twitch stream, and they were talking about this, and somebody said, man, the audience turned on Maddie hard. Yeah, oh God, it's so true.
If there was one character you never ever want to be in a television show, it is the character who is coming between the OTP. Because that will never work out well for you.
Yeah.
It reminded me in a weird way of I don't know. I remember if you guys have watched Downton Abbey or not, but Matthew and Mary have their love connection, and they get separated. Then Matthew comes back with Lavinia, and you're just like, Lavinia, this is not going to work out for you at all.
Girl.
And spoilers, no, it does not. And then Matthew's like, I'm so broken up about it. Actually, no, I'm not.
Okay, so before we close out, and we did, obviously we've talked about it a couple times, but I really just have to communicate the depth of my emotions and thirst levels when the jail scene happened, because when did you really think I needed to, send all, all my guards away? You become quite predictable. And just the urgency of that kiss that happens immediately. And, and then just the nerdy geekiness of, Caitlin saying, while you were gone, I was, and I was with someone, and then, Caitlin, I don't fucking care. And then the music kicking in, and the quick fumbling of, take on various articles of clothing. It's just so deliriously happy and romantic, and we'll just say it, very horny. Um, and yeah, like I said, it was only just a little bit ruined by the fact that my dad walked into the room while the scene was going on.
And
but I loved it so much. It made me so happy, and yeah, it's like the fulfillment of everything I wanted going into this season, and yeah.
And shout out to the music that plays under that scene as well. Fantastic by King Princess. That really, it's the perfect mood setter for that particular scene, especially when you listen to the music and you listen to the lyrics. You're like, yeah, this is Vi and Caitlyn's song here.
Yeah, and I'm and of course I totally stole this joke, so like I'm not an original thinker in this way, but when I posted in the Slack and I posted that gif from season 1 where Vi's in the jail cell and she says, Undercity's gonna eat you alive. Yeah.
Foreshadowing.
God. But yeah, no. Like I said, going into the season, I just wanted them to have a little bit of happiness before things went wrong. And they had happiness. Things went terribly wrong, but then they had lots of happiness again. So yeah, I got the one thing that I really wanted this season, and more than I thought, because I thought, because we've been trained to expect unfortunately the tragic ending of gay couples, especially when it's women, and going back to everything from Buffy the Vampire Slayer to The 100, and on and on and on and on, and it's always really frustrating. So I think I just automatically expected that things had to end bad for the two of them, and then the fact that it didn't, and and whether whether you want to say that they get a happily ever after, or that they get a fresh start, it's just really nice to see that, and my romantic shipper heart was just delighted, and yeah, that's why I'm like, you know what? If you do just want to leave those characters there for the foreseeable future, like, I'll miss them, but also kind of okay with it too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then maybe Victor and Jace are floating somewhere in the cosmos. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and see, that's the thing. Unfortunately, like, I feel like at the very least, Jace has zipped out of existence altogether. Because I feel like maybe there's some part of Victor that's still out there, but I unfortunately do kind of feel like Jace had sort of the classic like sacrifice to make up for sort of mistakes he made along the way, and to save the world, and all that. But I really hope that I'm wrong, and that the two of them are out there, and yeah, it would just be nice to to think of the two of them out there forever.
Well, I mean, we know
together.
that alternate timelines do exist, so maybe there is a timeline where they work on inventions together, just not arcane stuff, like.
Well, yeah, and that's the healing part of episode 7 for me, is the fact that it's not just like an episode of what could have been. That reality exists out there, and many more do as well. So, and I said this earlier, but I'm really glad that episode ends with Powder, in that dimension, that it doesn't cut back to our world or not our world, but the primary world for the end of the episode. I really like that it makes a statement that this timeline and this story mattered, and it's going to carry on.
Right. Okay. So what is it that Jason and Victor got the Thelma and Louise ending? Just keep going.
Indeed.
Oh God, but yeah, no. There's a happy ending, timeline out there for all the characters. So
and maybe there's a timeline where Jace, Victor, and Mel are a throuple.
yes.
That timeline exists on AO3, I guess.
Or if there's endless amounts of timelines, like one of them has to have that. So
yeah. I'm down for it.
I think a lot of people would be down for that.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah. I'd be down to watch that, honestly.
See?
Yeah. Okay, we've gotten in our the thirst portion of the stream. Yeah. But again, just gonna say, back tattoo, muscles. Okay, I'm done. I swear. But yeah, it just has to be said again and again. Sorry. Okay. So moving on. So I think we've just about covered everything.
I think so.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Trish, and obviously Stev as well. We knew he wasn't going to make it for the whole amount of time, but he did stay a lot longer than I thought he would. Yeah, he was a trooper.
He was a trooper.
Yeah. And yeah, so just thank you so much. This was, I have to say, one of the funnest streams that I think we've ever done, just because,
it's so rich in content, even though we're just really one season, but it's still so much. Yeah,
the amount of story that there was for us to talk about, having you on here, I'm not going to speak for Jared, although he better agree. You are absolutely just one of my absolute favorite people to have on, and I'm humbled by the fact that you agree to come on so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and as for Stev, he's okay.
Yeah.
But no, it really meant a lot for him to come on and have this discussion, because there's just, for me, there's so much nostalgia just associated with the fact that him, Nessie, and me just did Here Be Dragons for years, and so it always kind of feels like returning to something that I know when when one of them is on the channel, and yeah, so I was glad to hear that he had a lot of fun too, and yeah, and now I'm also going to just say thank you to everybody in the chat, because as I said earlier, Jared and I don't necessarily always have a rambunctious chat, although I always love the discussions that are had, even when we just have a couple people in there. But you guys really brought it tonight. There were conversations happening, especially early on, where I was like, yeah, I can't keep up with the chat this week. I'm just going to have to let that be its own thing. So thank you so much for the wonderful conversation and the feedback. And for those of you who have tuned in for the first time, maybe you're just here for Arcane, but I would love it if you could check out the other stuff on our channel. And if it's, if you see some stuff that you like, just consider, coming back in the future, maybe subscribing to the channel, maybe. But regardless, it was great having you guys. And yeah, and lastly, just Jared, thank you for not only for, wonderful conversation as always, this week, but also thank you for being understanding about the past couple weeks. And, sort of, I was kind of I was in the dumps, as I think a lot of us were, and but I feel like we're back with a vengeance. This was a really good discussion this week.
I agree, and I completely understand your desire to take time off after the events of the early November. Obviously it put a lot of people through the emotional ringer, and that's understandable, and you'll need the time to work it out, but don't let them take your joy from you. And this is something that gives us joy to talk about things we love. It is an ethos of this channel that we talk about things we love. So if you see that we're a discussion, you can be assured that we're not there to shit on the thing. We're there to talk about what works for us and what doesn't, but always in the spirit of celebrating the art and the artists and the people who are engaged with it. And we will always have guests on like Trish and like Stev who share that mentality.
Yeah, it feels like you're touching on it now, but it feels like a good thing to mention to people who are watching for the first time tonight. We are not a channel that talks about things that we don't like. It's just not our brand. It's not like what we like doing. A lot of channels will cover everything and then sort of delight in getting engagement because they were hating on something. If we don't like something, chances are we're not going to talk about it on the channel, and that's how you'll know what we don't like. But we like to talk about things that we're enthusiastic about and that we enjoy. And so if that sounds like something you'd like, I guess I'd consider coming back in the future. We'd love to have you. And so just again, quickly talking about what's coming up over the next couple weeks. Next week, we will be doing one of two things. If Jared can make it out to the movies, we'll be talking about the film Wicked, which I'm just head over heels in love with. I was a fan of the stage show, and I just adored the movie. So hopefully we'll be talking about that. If that falls through, we will be talking about the Netflix series Black Doves that is coming out this coming week, starring Keira Knightley, who you will quickly discover if you're new to the channel that Jared and I are just a bit obsessed, and and we love Miss Knightley and her many films. So that'll be a recurring theme that you'll notice. If we don't talk about that next week, we will definitely be talking about it in early January.
Yeah.
And then to finish off this December on the 15th, before we go on a Christmas hiatus, we'll be talking about The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, the anime film coming out in a couple weeks now. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And, I'm really glad that we'll be ending the year with The Lord of the Rings, as it should be.
Yeah, that staples of our channel: Keira, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Keira Knightley, and Christopher Nolan films. Because for one discussion that we missed in the last couple of weeks that I am going to hold John to a return engagement on is Interstellar. We were going to talk about it for the 10th anniversary. We took that week off because of everything that happened, but we are going to circle back to that one. I'm very keen to have that discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess that's about it. Just Trish, you want to plug your podcast one more time?
Yeah, that's the Silent Sisters podcast. Pretty much wherever you get your podcasts, it's there. A Song of Ice and Fire and House of the Dragon content. I'm on Blue Sky now, finally, and I'll put it in the chat. But I'm Blue of House Lemons on Blue Sky.
Just real quick, Mother Wine. I am cautiously optimistic. I want to wait to see what develops, because even though we pretty much love, any you know, it's pretty much a love fest when it comes to Middle Earth content. Even when there are missteps taken, I have more than a couple quibbles with the Hobbit films, but I still have great affection for them. So I can't imagine there's a world where I don't end up getting hyped up for the Hunt for Gollum. We'll just have to see what materializes. I do hope they learned a couple lessons from the experience on The Hobbit. But we'll see. I think they're making a really good start with this new era of Middle Earth movies with by doing War of the Rohirrim. I'd like to see them do some more animated stuff in the future too. But I love the people who are going to be involved with the Hunt for Gollum. So for now, it's a thumbs up, but with like that little asterisk of. But let's also wait to see, what comes out for it, and who's involved. Andy Serkis is directing, so I have a lot of love for that man. So I think there are many reasons to be excited about it.
I agree.
And if you guys want to follow us, all of our Bluesky links are in the description. Thankfully I did remove those Twitter links because they're no good anymore. So
I am the lone holdout on X/Twitter, primarily because I refuse to let Elon have my handle. But I am primarily now going to be more active on Bluesky, and we'll see how long I stick with the old site.
Yeah, no, it happened a couple weeks before the election. I was like, I can't handle the stink of being on that site anymore. So I feel much cleaner after after being off there. But that's okay. Yeah, I didn't think so. Well, it's funny because, and sorry everyone, I'm dragging out the ending here, but I just keep cracking up that you said that thing about Elon insulting Blade Runner 2049 after I left, and I'm like, if I hadn't been off before then, that would have done it. So yeah, but yeah. So I guess that's it, everybody. Thank you, everybody, once again for tuning in. Loved talking about this great show with all of you, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Or at some point in the future. I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful night. Thank you once more, my co-host Jared, our wonderful friend Stev, and thank you, Trish. It is always such a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.
Good night.
Take care.